In a tall hotel wrapped in dim darkness, a couple was getting it with each other. The atmosphere felt heavy and quiet, as if time itself slowed around them. However, the way they reached this moment required going back a few hours earlier to understand how everything unfolded. Inside the successful company of Venus, the CEO Cha Jung-moo frowned while sitting at his desk. His secretary noticed his expression and mentioned he looked uncomfortable. She politely asked if he would like her to lower the blinds to make the room more comfortable. However, Jung-moo denied the suggestion, stating the discomfort was not because of the light. Instead, he tapped lightly on the resignation letter placed in front of him, indicating it was the real cause of his unease. The lady stepped closer to him, calmly questioning the matter. She mentioned she made sure to write the letter as neatly as possible, putting effort into presenting it properly. Jung-moo responded with an annoyed tone, affirming her writing was indeed impeccable. He added she always carried out every task with utmost perfection, addressing her formally as Miss Min. Despite acknowledging her excellence, he questioned the reason behind her sudden decision. Explaining it felt unexpected and left him unsure what to say. Siwa replied in a composed manner, stating her decision was based on personal reasons. Ji-hyun-moo reflected on the situation internally. Although he knew he could hire another secretary at any time, working with Siwa for the past 3 years created a level of efficiency he grew accustomed to. She always prepared everything before he even asked, functioning almost like a perfectly tuned machine. Her work consistently impressed him, and she never failed to exceed his expectations in any aspect. He recalled how chaotic the office became during the previous summer when she went on vacation. The environment turned into complete disorder, and he struggled to manage even basic tasks. That experience made him realize how essential she was to his daily work, and yet despite all this, she now stood in front of him with a resignation letter. Jung-moo ran his hand through his hair in frustration before calling out her name. He pointed out they worked together for around 3 years, and emphasized she was aware of how much he relied on her. However, Siwa remained silent, offering no immediate response. He then asked if something unfortunate happened, but Siwa quickly denied it, stating it was nothing of that sort. Her response made Jung-moo wonder if there was another underlying reason. He asked if she wanted a raise, suggesting he could increase her salary. Siwa calmly replied she already received the highest salary in the industry, leaving him momentarily speechless. Not giving up, he asked if she desired a promotion instead. Suga responded such a move might lead to unnecessary gossip among others, as people could assume she received special treatment. Jung-moo continued searching for a solution, suggesting he could arrange a new car for her to use for commuting. However, Suga gently reminded him she never drove, and he himself never allowed her to drive his car either. It became clear she would not easily change her decision. Ji-hyun Mutter tapped his fingers lightly against the desk, deep in thought before finally asking what he could possibly do to make her stay. He told her to simply name what she wanted, assuring her he would provide it without hesitation. Siwa clenched her fists slightly as she swallowed nervously. She quietly questioned what she truly wanted. Jung-moo firmly encouraged her to speak honestly and tell him everything. After a brief pause, Siwa called out to him. As she turned towards him, her face flushed red, and she hesitantly asked if he could sleep with her. An intense silence followed her words. The air between them felt heavy as Siwa slightly trembled, realizing what she just said. Confusion filled her mind, and she wondered how such words left her mouth. Overwhelmed with embarrassment, she quickly covered her face and apologized, asking him to forget everything she said. She insisted she must be out of her mind in that moment. However, to her surprise, Ji-hyun-moo remained calm. After a short pause, he stated he would think about it carefully. He told her he would give an answer by the weekend, and asked her to wait until then. Later, at a cafeteria, Siwa's friend Yoon-shim reacted with complete shock upon hearing what happened. She asked in disbelief if Siwa truly asked Cha Jung-moo, the same person they both knew, to sleep with her, confirming she referred to their young and highly competent CEO to Wix. Siwa quietly nodded. Ji-hyun-shim described Cha Jung-moo as someone who made every business venture successful and was admired by everyone for both his skills and his appearance. Hearing this, she struggled to process the situation and even spilled her coffee in shock. She admitted she herself could never gather the courage to confess her feelings to him, questioning how Sohal managed to say something so bold. Siwa sighed softly before revealing her feelings started 3 years ago. She recalled a moment when they walked together while she was informing him about his upcoming meeting with the Taikang group. During that time, Jung-moo noticed she might be feeling cold and suggested she could go ahead first. Siwa declined politely, stating she did not want to disrupt his schedule, and even apologized for causing him concern. The next day, the receptionist informed her that the CEO had left a hand warmer on her desk. It was explained he gave one to everyone due to the cold weather, and was very considerate. However, when Siwa saw the hand warmer along with a small note cheering her on, she felt something change within her. She believed it was that very day when she fell deeply for her boss. However, after that moment, she came to know Jung-moo was getting engaged to the youngest daughter of the Taikang group. The women around her remarked how the rich always married among themselves, living in a completely different world from people like them. Afterwards, Siwa became lost in thought. She believed she already knew she never had a chance with him, and everything unfolding felt expected, so she should not feel upset over it. Still, she wondered what kind of person he would marry, and imagined whether they would share intimate moments like kissing. While thinking about it, she unknowingly overpoured the tea in her cup. She once believed she was good at separating her personal and professional life, but she realized she was mistaken. Her emotions quietly interfered with her work more than she expected. Jung-moo later approached her, asking if something was wrong, as she appeared unusually distracted. He questioned if she felt unwell, but Siwa denied it calmly. In the end, after thinking through everything, she reached a firm decision. She decided she needed to quit. In the present, Moon-seo questioned if that was the reason she gave him the resignation letter, to which Soha quietly affirmed. She apologized, saying she felt like a poor excuse for a human being, which made her friend immediately ask her not to be so harsh on herself. Moon-seo suggested maybe he also had feelings for her, explaining he would not have said those things if he truly had no interest at all. Xiao shook her head and dismissed the idea, saying he was only being polite because they worked well together. Her voice trembled as she grew emotional, questioning how she was ever going to face him again after everything. Yamir Inshim insisted she genuinely believed he had feelings for Sale. Suddenly her expression changed as she looked ahead. She placed her drink down and told Sale to listen carefully to what she was about to say without speaking. She then spoke in a strange and deliberate tone, asking if Siwa was really going to refuse meeting him. She continued by saying she wanted to date him, describing him as tall, handsome, and someone with an amazing personality. She added she never met a man like him before, and mentioned he seemed very interested in her, asking for a chance. Siwa grew confused by this sudden behavior and questioned what her friend was trying to do. Before she could understand, a voice came from behind. Jung-moo appeared and called out her name, pointing out she was not checking her messages so as to make Siwa apologize for it. Afterwards, they entered the elevator together while Siwa's phone buzzed again, showing a message from Yoon Shim, who commented Jung-moo looked completely jealous earlier. Siwa quietly switched off her phone, choosing to ignore it. Jung-moo then asked about work, questioning what time the meeting with Taikhan Construction was scheduled. Soha answered in a composed tone, saying it was set for 5. He asked if something urgent came up, adding she could take the call if it was work-related. Soha denied it calmly, saying it was nothing important. Jung-moo then asked who was contacting her. The question caught Soha off guard, making her pause briefly. She thought about how he was never the type to ask about her personal matters. However, noticing him staring at her, she turned her face slightly and said it was no one. She tried to steady her thoughts, reminding herself not to read too much into his actions. She told herself he was only asking out of simple curiosity. As the elevator doors opened, Siwa moved slightly forward, saying she would step out first. However, Jung-moo stopped her. He leaned forward and pressed the button, causing the doors to close again. The sudden movement made the space feel tense and quiet. He then brought up what she said earlier, stating he would give his answer now, making Soha freeze in place as she listened. Jung-moo calmly affirmed he would sleep with her, but he added one condition. He explained there would be no limit to the number of times. As he spoke, he leaned slightly closer, making the distance between them feel even smaller. Afterwards, at the hotel, Jung-woo pulled Seurtu closer as their lips met. Jung-woo kissed her deeply, while Seurtu slowly responded, taking the initiative as she remembered his words from the elevator, that there would be no limit to the number of times. The thought still surprised her, yet it stirred something within her. Jeonwoo then questioned if she truly wanted that, mentioning she appeared bold on the outside but might not feel the same inside. Seoha mumbled softly in response, her voice barely audible as she affirmed it. Jeonwoo leaned slightly closer, saying he could not quite catch what she said. Gathering her courage, Seoha repeated herself, clearly stating there was no limit. In the present moment, Jung-moo looked at her carefully and asked if she was certain. His voice softened as he observed her expression, quietly asking if she wanted him to stop. Instead of answering with words, Siwa reached forward and tugged his tie gently, pulling him closer. She asked him not to stop, her actions speaking more than her voice. Ji-hyun moved forward again, closing the distance between them as they shared the moment together. The atmosphere grew warmer, and both of them allowed themselves to get carried away, enjoying each second without hesitation. At night, Sola sat inside a taxi as she protested that it seemed like an important meeting and asked if he was sure she did not need to attend. Jung-moo, standing outside, apologized, explaining he could not personally take her home. He reassured her he would handle everything on his own, and told her not to worry. He suggested she should get some rest, adding he was aware he gave her a hard time earlier. Siwa brushed it off lightly, though her face turned slightly red. Jung-moo then recalled her earlier comment about being too exhausted to even lift a finger, which made Siwa try to laugh it away. She gave a simple excuse and told him to call her if he needed anything before bidding him farewell. As the taxi began to move, Ji-hyun glanced at the number plate, quietly noting it down before turning away. Later, inside her apartment, Siwa sat in her tub, lost in thought. She replayed everything in her mind, calling herself unreasonable and questioning how she would face him the next day. Her thoughts felt scattered as she muttered softly to herself. Her mind drifted back to his presence, recalling his appearance and the way his body and abs looked. The memory made her feel overwhelmed, and she quickly shook her head, lightly slapping her face as if trying to bring herself back to reality. She reminded herself she needed to stay grounded. Just then, her phone buzzed, catching her attention. She picked it up and saw a random message about claiming a November coupon, which made her feel overly suspicious about it. Letting out a tired sigh, she dropped onto her bed. She thought about how he was probably still in an important meeting. Trying to steady herself, she accepted the reality that nothing more could come from this. She reminded herself they could never truly be together, and it was better not to build false hope. She decided she would not let herself go any further emotionally, believing it was the best choice for her. As she slept, her phone suddenly buzzed again, making her groan in frustration, wondering who could be calling at such a late hour. With one eye barely open, she glanced at the screen and saw Jungmu's name. Immediately, she sat up and answered the call. Jungmu asked if he had woken her up, but Siwa quickly denied it. She then asked why he was calling so late, wondering if something went wrong at the meeting. Jungmu reassured her everything went well. He explained he wanted to call earlier, but President Kim kept talking endlessly, leaving him no chance to step away. He added he called as soon as he could, though he noticed how late it had become. He admitted he felt a little guilty for not being able to drive her home himself. Hearing this made Siwa's heart beat faster. Jungwoo paused briefly before apologizing for speaking too much. He told her to get some rest and mentioned he would see her the next day. Siwa quietly agreed before ending the call. As she lay back on her bed, her heart continued racing and a faint smile formed on her lips. She realized sleep would not come easily that night. Meanwhile, Jungwoo found himself deep in thought. He reflected on how it had already been 3 years since he first met Sola. Over time, there were always rumors surrounding the young CEO and his secretary, but most faded once people recognized her professionalism and skill. They spent nearly every day working together during those years, and he could not deny he felt something for her. Even so, he made sure to maintain clear boundaries, wanting to protect her from unnecessary gossip. While bathing, he tried to clear his thoughts, but her image lingered in his mind. He recalled the moment she made her request, and the memory stayed with him. He realized she affected him more than he expected, leaving him restless as he quietly muttered to himself. The next day at the office, Siwa walked in as usual and reported that she prepared the schedule for the day, along with all the documents required for the morning meeting. She also placed his breakfast on the table, sandwich and coffee arranged neatly as always. She continued by informing him that the afternoon meeting was moved to Friday as requested. Jungmu observed her carefully and realized she appeared the same as always, calm and composed. He thanked her and mentioned it was almost time for the meeting, suggesting they should head down together. Inside the elevator, Jungmu called out to Soya, casually asking if she slept well the previous night. The question caught her off guard. For a brief moment, her thoughts drifted back to everything from the night before, and the memory sent a slight shiver through her. She felt awkward, but quickly composed herself and responded with a small smile, saying she slept very well. Ji-Hoon-moo smiled faintly, saying he was glad to hear that. He then asked if she had heard about his supposed engagement. Siwa paused before nodding, confirming she heard about it. However, her mind grew restless. She remembered everything that happened and silently blamed herself, thinking she crossed a line she never should have. A sense of guilt filled her as she questioned her own actions. Jungmu, however, seemed confused. He mentioned he was not sure who started such a ridiculous rumor and wondered if that was what led to her earlier suggestion. Julha tried to respond, attempting to explain it was not like that, but she hesitated. Before she could continue, her phone rang. She quickly apologized and stepped aside, saying she needed a moment. As she checked her phone, she noticed a notification about an Angel Christmas Edition launch, which puzzled her. Ji-Hoon-moo looked at her and asked if something was wrong or if it was work-related. Siwa shook her head and replied it was just something personal. Later, Siwa approached Jungmu again and politely requested to take the next day off. She apologized for asking at such a busy time. Jungmu reassured her immediately, telling her it was not an issue. Instead, he expressed concern, mentioning she did not look well and seemed a bit down. Siwa assured him she would not let it affect her work and quietly stepped out of the room. As she left, Ji-Hoon-moo remained thoughtful, feeling something was off. He could tell she was not entirely fine, even though she insisted otherwise. Later, while sitting on a bus, So-hal stared outside the window as familiar thoughts returned. Every year, as winter began, she made a visit to see her father at the correctional facility. It became a routine she could not avoid, even if it weighed heavily on her heart. Inside the facility, an officer approached her with a hesitant expression. He apologized and explained her father refused to come out to see her again. Hearing this made Siwa tighten her grip, her emotions quietly building inside. Her thoughts drifted to the past. Her father was involved in a hit-and-run case, one that changed everything. She once believed he was a kind and upright man who would never commit such an act. However, the evidence against him was overwhelming. The case concluded he ignored the victim even after confirming the person was still alive, and that decision led to his sentence. 10 years passed since he went to prison, yet he continued to refuse to meet her. Despite everything, she kept visiting. The officer gently mentioned her father always seemed a little happier on the days she came, even if he never showed it openly. Siwa listened quietly and responded that she would come again. For her, winter always carried a heavy feeling. After leaving the facility, Siwa went to a Christmas series bakery. The receptionist greeted her warmly and congratulated her for getting a snowman item, mentioning many people wanted it and she was lucky. Siwa looked at it and questioned softly if she was really lucky, admitting she actually wanted something else. The receptionist suggested she could exchange it, but Siwa declined, saying she preferred choosing it herself. When asked what she originally wanted, Siwa answered she wanted Rudolph. A faint memory crossed her mind, one where it ended up crushed. She stepped outside, feeling the cold air brush against her face. At that moment, her phone rang, as it was her friend Yoon-shim. Yoon-shim asked how her visit went. Siwa thought back to her past again. After her father, who was her only guardian, went to prison, she was sent to an orphanage. It was there she met Yoon-shim, who became her closest friend and someone who understood her completely. Yoon-shim tried to cheer her up, mentioning she made a large pot of soybean paste stew with plenty of crabs, and suggested Siwa should come over to eat. Siwa realized Ji-hyun was worried about her. She apologized softly, saying she did not feel like going out that night. Yuan-shim quickly told her not to apologize and explained she only asked because she cooked too much for one person. Siwa Stace then suggested they could have beer together instead. Yuan-shim immediately agreed, saying she would come over right away. Siwa thanked her sincerely enough to make Yoon-shim question why she was thanking her. Siwa replied she was simply grateful to have her as a friend who understood everything. Yoon-shim laughed it off, saying it made her feel strange, and told her to take a shower and wait while she brought the beer. Just as the call was about to end, Yoon-shim suddenly remembered something important and quickly mentioned Jungmoo came by during the day. Later, Jungmoo continued to stare at his phone, waiting for Solha's reply. He found it unusual. First, she suddenly asked for a day off, and now she was not checking her messages. A sense of concern grew in his mind as he wondered if something happened to her. Just then, his phone rang. Seeing Siwa's name, he answered quickly. Before he could say much, Siwa asked if there was any problem at the office. Ji-hyun-moo replied things felt slightly disorganized without her, adding she truly was an exceptional secretary. He mentioned he tried reaching her earlier but could not get through. Siwa responded, saying if anything urgent came up, she would handle it by the end of the day. However, Jungmoo assured her everything was fine. He explained he only called because he was curious about her sudden leave and wanted to check if she was alright. He added she did not need to explain if she did not want to, but he was simply worried. Siwa replied calmly it was nothing serious and thanked him for his concern. Suddenly, Siwa's doorbell rang repeatedly, the sound echoing through her apartment. Siwa quickly apologized over the phone, to which Jungmoo responded calmly, saying she must be busy and should get some rest, adding he would see her the following week. After the call ended, Jungmoo leaned back on his sofa, tapping his fingers lightly as his thoughts wandered. He wondered if calling her at such a late hour was a bit excessive. But on the other side, he was curious about who was ringing her doorbell so insistently so late at night. The following week, as Jungmoo prepared himself at the office, he overheard two employees whispering nearby. One mentioned it seemed like Solha had a new boyfriend, while the other agreed, pointing out she suddenly took Friday off. They added she kept checking her phone during work hours, something she never used to do, and also noted she looked happier these days. Hearing this, Jungmoo paused. The words reminded him of something. He recalled Yoon-shim's conversation with Solha about a man, describing him as tall, handsome, and someone with a great personality. While earlier, he too had noticed Solha quietly looking at her phone more often than usual. Returning to the present, Ji-hyun-moo approached the employees and asked if they had seen Siwa. They replied she was currently taking a call. His thoughts connected quickly, leading him to assume the person who visited her that night might be the same one they were talking about. He then walked toward his cabin and opened the door. Inside, Siwa called out to him, informing him Taekang Construction contacted them and requested a meeting as soon as possible. She added President Kim would personally attend. Jungmoo acknowledged it and asked if she could fit it into his schedule, and Siwa confirmed it, saying that it was arranged for the next evening, which he approved. After a brief pause, Jungmoo brought up lunch, but Siwa apologized, explaining she would not be able to join him that day. Jungmoo questioned her, slightly surprised, to which Siwa hesitated, appearing unsure how to respond, saying she had something to take care of. Before she could step away, Jungmoo called out to her again. His voice carried a different tone as he asked why she seemed to be avoiding him lately. The question caught Siwa off guard. Without hesitation, he followed it up, asking if she was done with him now that they spent the night together once. Siwa felt confused by his remark, wondering what he meant by being done with him. Jungmoo continued, pointing out she suddenly took a day off and kept leaving her desk earlier. He questioned if the man Yoon-shim mentioned had influenced her decision, asking if he told her not to have lunch with him. Siwa reacted with surprise and quickly tried to clarify. She explained there seemed to be a misunderstanding. She said she left her desk earlier only to arrange the reservation for the meeting scheduled for the next day. As for Friday, she mentioned she simply had a personal matter to attend to. She continued saying she was not introduced to anyone and did not know who he was referring to. Jungmoo then asked about the person who rang her doorbell. Siwa immediately answered it was Yuan-shim's. Hearing this, Jungmoo let out a quiet sigh of relief and repeated her name as if confirming it to himself. For a moment, he seemed lost in his thoughts. Siwa watched him and began to wonder if he truly believed she was avoiding him after that night. She tried to say something, but before she could continue, a knock came at the door. An employee stepped in and informed them an urgent meeting was arranged regarding a recent property issue, mentioning they were unable to reach the CEO earlier. Jungmoo gave a brief instruction to Soya, telling her they should go. Without wasting time, they both stepped out and headed toward the meeting room. During the meeting, Siwa found it difficult to focus. She felt restless and kept glancing toward Jungmoo, but he avoided her gaze and remained fully engaged in the discussion. He continued speaking with the other employees, maintaining a professional tone without acknowledging her presence. At one point, Siwa softly called out to him, but he continued speaking as if he did not hear her. She lowered her voice and murmured to herself, realizing she would not get a chance to talk to him like this. Later that night, as the office grew quieter, Ji-Hoon-moo walked past her desk and asked if she was still there. Seola confirmed she had some work left to finish. Ji-Hoon-moo nodded and told her to take it easy before heading into his cabin. Siwa felt this might be her only chance. She gathered her courage and walked inside. Standing in front of him, she spoke carefully, saying the suggestion she made earlier could be forgotten. She apologized, adding she did not mean to trouble him. Jungmoo looked at her, questioning what she meant. Siwa explained she did not fully understand what she said at that time, and thought it was better to leave it behind. However, before she could step back, Jungmoo leaned slightly closer and asked if he was really that disappointing. Siwa felt cornered by the question and quickly denied it, saying it was not like that. Jungmoo then asked what reason she had to push him away, now as his words left her momentarily speechless. After a brief pause, Ji-Hoon-moo revealed something unexpected. He admitted he had feelings for her. Hearing this made Siwa's face turn red. He continued, saying he held those feelings back for 3 years. He questioned why else he would agree to something like that if it meant nothing to him. Siwa felt overwhelmed as she processed his words. She realized he carried those feelings quietly for so long. Still, she turned her face slightly, saying she did not understand what he meant. Ji-Hoon-moo spoke honestly, saying he felt anxious on Friday. He wanted to go to her but felt he did not have the right to. His words carried a sense of restraint he maintained for a long time. After a moment of silence, Siwa admitted she also had feelings for him. Her confession surprised Jungmoo. He looked at her carefully, then gently reached out and held her face. Siwa closed her eyes instinctively, expecting him to move closer. However, Jungmoo paused and gave a faint smirk, saying she was getting ahead of herself. His words caught her off guard. Feeling embarrassed, Siwa quickly tried to step back, saying she needed to return to her work. Before she could move away, Jungmoo held her hand and stopped her. He told her she would not be working overtime that day, mentioning she had other plans now. Siwa looked at him with confusion and asked what he meant. Jungmoo answered simply, saying it was a plan that had just been made. The scene shifted to the hotel, where Siwa felt her heartbeat quicken. She questioned why she felt even more nervous than before. Trying to calm herself, she pushed aside her thoughts and stepped closer to Jungmoo. She reached for him, closing the distance between them. Jungmoo responded with a teasing expression as he leaned closer. The moment between them grew intense as they moved closer, preparing to share another private moment together. After a long and intimate night, the next morning arrived quietly. Siwa had kept her eyes closed as her heart beat unevenly, and she lay still while sensing a dull ache across her body. It seemed clear to her that they spent hours together the previous night, and as the memory returned, her face turned warm with embarrassment. She felt unsure at first, but then she thought it all made sense. She slowly opened her eyes and noticed that Jungmoo was still asleep beside her. His expression appeared calm and deep in rest. She found it hard to believe that she could see his face like this on a weekend morning. From such a close distance, he looked even more attractive than she expected. She hesitated for a moment, but then tried to reach out and touch his face. Before her fingers could move further, Jungmoo suddenly called out to her and gently held her hand. His sudden reaction surprised her. He asked in a teasing tone if the previous night was not enough for her. Ji-Hoon felt caught off guard and did not know how to respond. He smiled lightly and added that they could continue from where they left off if she wished. Seo-ha quickly tried to deny his assumption, insisting it was not like that. However, Jungmoo pulled her closer without hesitation. He expressed that he wished he could see her like this every morning, and then he placed a soft kiss on her forehead. His words and actions made her heart race uncontrollably. She felt overwhelmed, and because of everything, she barely managed to rest afterward. By the time she reached work on Monday, she felt completely drained. As she recalled the events of that day, she remembered how they went out for breakfast at a luxurious restaurant. She thought she could have handled things on her own, but Ji-Hoon-moo insisted on taking care of her. He carefully cut the steak for her, which made her feel slightly shy. When she questioned his actions, he simply replied that he always wanted to do something like this for her. His words caused her heart to skip a beat again. The next day, Sunday, passed in a calmer manner. They spent time walking together while holding hands. The moment felt simple yet meaningful to her. Before she left his apartment, Ji-Hoon-moo reminded her to call him once she reached home safely. His concern stayed with her even afterward. Back in the present, Siwa quietly sniffled as she reflected on everything. To her, it all felt almost like a dream. Just then, Eunso called out to her from behind, breaking her thoughts. Eunso asked if she had not heard her calling multiple times. Sylvia turned slightly and apologized, explaining that she felt a little distracted. Eunseom looked at her with a teasing expression and pointed out how unusual it was for someone as attentive as Sylvia to seem so absent-minded. Sylvia felt slightly embarrassed and began to think about how much she had already told Eunseom before. She remembered how messy it became when she previously admitted that Jongmu agreed to spend the night with her. The memory alone made her feel flustered. Eunseom gently tapped her shoulder and asked if she was thinking about that again. She then curiously asked if there was any good news. Siwa hesitated for a brief moment but then admitted, with visible embarrassment, that they were officially dating now. Inshim reacted immediately with excitement and asked if it was truly so. The two continued their conversation while walking together, their voices filled with curiosity and surprise. At the same time, the scene shifted toward the Korean International Airport. A blond man arrived, looking slightly irritated. As he walked forward, he questioned on the phone whether he truly needed to stop by. While moving through the crowd, a child accidentally stumbled into his suitcase, causing it to fall. The man reacted with visible annoyance. Without much concern, he pulled his suitcase back and continued walking. Meanwhile, the child groaned softly and began to cry. The blond man paid little attention and continued his call, casually mentioning that Jongmu seemed to be doing quite well these days and appeared highly successful. Afterward, in the parking lot, Jongmu and Solha stood together while preparing to leave for their next meeting. Jongmu mentioned that the meeting was scheduled for 6, and Solha confirmed that it was the only time President Kim was available. Jongmu responded calmly, saying it could not be helped since the matter was urgent. Jongmu then asked if she would like him to book a suite on the way there. Leaving, Siwa paused for a moment, unsure of how to respond, and her hesitation made her expression stiffen slightly. Jongmu leaned closer and remarked that she seemed to be having improper thoughts again, which caused her to feel embarrassed. He then explained that he worked late the previous night and barely managed to get any rest. He added that she already knew how exhausting President Kim could be during meetings. As he spoke, his hand moved slightly, as if intending to reach for her fingers. Suwa quickly turned her hand away and lowered her voice, asking what would happen if someone noticed them. Jigongmu responded that she was acting too distant and pointed out that the only way someone could see them was through the security camera. Suwa glanced around carefully, checking her surroundings before relaxing slightly. After a brief pause, she agreed, saying it would be only for that day. She slowly reached out and held his hand, though her movements remained cautious. She then suggested that if he was truly tired, she could drive instead, but Jingmu immediately refused, saying it was unnecessary and that he was fine. Later, during the meeting, Jongmu discussed the matter of purchasing the land. He explained that the process was taking longer than expected and stated that it should be resolved within the year. Seolka continued typing on her laptop, but she felt that the delay showed a lack of efficiency on their part. As she focused on her work, she noticed the old man across the table staring at her. His gaze remained fixed on her face, which made her uncomfortable. She felt irritated but knew she could not slap him across openly. She forced herself to remain composed while silently wishing the mating would end quickly. Jongmu noticed her discomfort and shifted his attention toward Mr. Kim. He called out to him, bringing the discussion back on track. Mr. Kim seemed distracted and asked what they were discussing again. He admitted that he might be getting old, as he found it difficult to concentrate lately. Jongmu clenched his fingers but maintained a controlled tone. He reminded him that they were discussing the timeline for purchasing the construction land. Mr. Kim nodded and explained that the approval process had not been easy. He mentioned that the land was currently being used as a tourist attraction and that there were height restrictions and several other factors to consider. After the meeting concluded, Mr. Kim assured Jongmu that he would handle the purchase personally. Jongmu responded by asking him to ensure it was completed within the agreed deadline. As the conversation ended, Mr. Kim turned his attention towards Solha and suggested going out for drinks. He attempted to reach for her hand while thanking her for her hard work. Before he could proceed, Jongmu stepped in between them and called out to Sola. He told her that he believed he left his phone in the car and needed it urgently. He then asked if she could retrieve it for him. Siharu nodded without hesitation and said she would return shortly. She quickly left the room, leaving the two men alone. As soon as she was gone, Mr. Kim made a remark, saying it must be pleasant to work with someone as young and attractive as her. Jungwoo responded briefly, stating that she was his secretary. Mr. Kim smirked and added that he thought she looked even better with her hair tied up. Jungwoo's expression hardened slightly as he warned him, suggesting that her presence might have been the reason he failed to focus during the meeting. Mr. Kim chuckled and remarked that Jongmu seemed unusually sharp that day. He questioned whether it was because of his secretary. His tone carried a hint of mockery, which caused Jongmu to clench his fist. Mr. Kim then stated that he was already aware of what was going on between them. Ji Hyun-moo looked at him with clear displeasure and commented on what an eyesore he is, so as to infuriate Mr. Kim. The remark immediately angered Mr. Kim, who demanded to know what he meant. Without warning, a loud sound echoed as Ji Hyun-moo slammed his fist against the wall beside him. The sudden impact startled Mr. Kim. Ji Hyun-moo calmly clarified that he was referring to the wall. He pointed out visible cracks and stated that even a light strike caused damage, which suggested deeper structural issues. He stepped closer, cornering Mr. Kim as he continued speaking. Mr. Kim looked confused and insisted that it was a new building. Ji Hyun-moo responded that it had only been completed a week ago, which made the condition even more questionable. He knocked firmly against the wall again, and the hollow sound made the situation feel more tense. Mr. Kim visibly grew uneasy and asked him to stop. He tried to calm the situation, suggesting that there might be some misunderstanding. Jong-moo remained composed and stated that he was simply verifying facts. He then questioned whether the Royal Palace Hotel was aware that Taekang had hired a subcontractor for the project instead of handling the construction themselves. His words carried a clear implication, leaving Mr. Kim with no easy way to respond. As Mr. Kim asked him to simply state what he wanted, the scene shifted towards Solha, who stepped outside. She thought she checked everywhere, yet she could not find the phone. Her expression showed slight confusion as she paused, wondering if she missed something. At that moment, her phone buzzed. She first assumed it was a message from Jong-moo, but instead, she noticed it came from Mr. Kim. The message contained an apology, stating regret for staring at her during the meeting. Solha found herself puzzled, as she could not understand where such a message came from or what caused the sudden change in his behavior. Before she could think further, Jong-moo approached her and called out her name, telling her they should leave since he already found his phone. Siwa looked at him with mild confusion and asked if he was not planning to go for drinks afterward. Jong-moo replied calmly that the plan was cancelled. Although she found it slightly unusual, she chose not to question him further and quietly followed him. The scene then shifted back to Mr. Kim. He stood alone, visibly frustrated, and muttered angrily under his breath, calling Jong-moo an insolent person. His mind returned to the earlier moment when Jong-moo forced him to send that apology. He recalled how Jong-moo warned him, saying he must have already received Solva's business card. Jong-moo then ordered him to send a message to her using that number and immediately delete her contact afterward. Mr. Kim initially tried to argue, saying the demand felt excessive. However, Ji Hyun-moo's expression made it clear that refusal was not an option. When Ji Hyun-moo questioned whether he intended to ignore the instruction, the pressure in his tone left no room for hesitation. Mr. Kim felt anger rise within him, yet he complied unwillingly. Afterward, his frustration only grew. He suddenly raised his voice and called out for his employee, demanding to know where he had been. His tone carried clear irritation as he waited for an answer. Mr. Han quickly responded, explaining that he went to escort the young master as instructed. Just then, another person entered the room casually and asked if it had been another difficult day. He walked in with ease, trying to grab the scattered documents in his hand, and offered to help if needed. The blonde man then took a seat without hesitation. Mr. Kim addressed him as Cho Tae-gun, his nephew. Mr. Kim complained about how difficult it had been to handle everything behind his father's back. He mentioned how many times he told him to stop interfering, yet Tae-gun never seemed to listen. Tae-gun, however, remained calm. He attempted to ease the tension, explaining that his actions were for his own benefit. He stated that he only wanted to secure a strong position within Taekang once he inherited it. He then shifted his attention to the documents in front of him, particularly the report related to the construction land purchase. After glancing through it, he remarked that, from what he could see, they both shared the same enemy. While they were in the car, Siwa looked toward Jong-moo and asked if he truly did not intend to tell her what happened in the meeting room. Jong-moo remained quiet for a brief moment before stating that nothing significant occurred and that he only asked for the work to be completed more quickly. Siwa did not seem fully convinced. She questioned him again, asking if he was certain he did not pressure Mr. Kim into apologizing. Jung-krum responded calmly, saying that Mr. Kim likely felt guilty on his own afterward. He added that she already knew how important the project was, implying that such behavior could be expected under pressure. Siwa tried to explain that she understood the importance of the project, yet she gently urged him to avoid causing unnecessary trouble in the future. Before she could finish speaking, Jong-moo suddenly increased the speed of the car. The abrupt change made her glance toward him with concern. Her eyes then fell on his hand. She noticed the injury and immediately asked what happened to it. Her voice rose in alarm as she questioned if he got into a physical fight. Once they reached the apartment, Siwa quickly focused on tending to his injury. She carefully treated his hand while saying that she already knew how President Kim behaved and that it would have been better to let the situation pass. She asked him once more if he truly did not hit him. Jong-moo turned his face slightly away and repeated that he only scraped his hand against the hallway wall. Siwa then nodded, saying she would believe him since she knew he was not the type to act recklessly. She added that if he truly fought him, they would likely be dealing with far more serious consequences by now. As she continued treating him, her grip intentionally tightened. Ji Hyun-moo quietly asked if she could be a little more gentle, but Siwa responded that she wanted him to feel some pain, though her tone carried more concern than anger. Jong-moo paused for a moment and then teased her lightly, asking if that was something she preferred. His remark made her feel embarrassed, and she questioned how he could joke at a time like this. Jong-moo replied casually, saying he only wondered and would adjust if needed. Before he could continue, he let out a small groan from the pain. Siwa immediately softened her actions and remarked that she hoped the injury would not leave a mark. Jongwoo then shifted the focus back to her. He gently held her hand and asked if she was alright. Siwa answered that she was fine, though she felt slightly annoyed, thinking she had already reassured him multiple times. She briefly thought about scolding him but chose not to. Jongwoo then admitted that he should have been more careful once he became aware of the unpleasant rumors surrounding President Kim. He apologized sincerely, expressing regret for not protecting her better during the meeting. Siwa shook her head and told him there was no need for an apology. However, Jongwoo insisted that if anything ever made her uncomfortable, she should inform him immediately in the future. Siwa agreed but added that he should promise not to create unnecessary trouble again. Jungwoo looked at her with mild curiosity and asked if he really left such a negative impression on her. Instead of answering directly, Siwa stood up and said she should head home. Jungwoo looked slightly surprised and asked if she truly intended to leave him alone. Suhal became a little uneasy and replied that they both had work the next day. Jungwoo loosened his tie and remarked that, as far as he remembered, there were no strict boundaries between them. His words caused Jola to feel embarrassed as she recalled their earlier understanding. She hesitated, thinking about staying, though she also worried about feeling exhausted the next day. Jongmu then said that she might feel tired if she stayed, so he would drive her home instead. Siwa attempted to stop him, saying she would be fine on her own. However, before she could move away, Jongmu gently pulled her closer and guided her to sit upon him. He asked, with a faint smile, why she kept seducing him back when he was prepared to let her go. Siwa looked at his face and felt slightly flustered, thinking she should be the one asking that question instead. Jongmu leaned closer and kissed her softly. He asked again if she believed she would feel too tired the next day. Solhei hesitated, then quietly asked if she could take his clothes off, which surprised him slightly. He let out a soft chuckle, causing her to question why he was laughing. Jongmu responded that he appreciated the gesture. As Siwa began to unbutton his shirt, she felt embarrassed and briefly wondered that she should not have said anything. However, Jongmu gently made her lie on the sofa, explaining that unlike during meetings, he found it difficult to remain patient around her. He spoke calmly, saying he would only proceed with her consent, as he did not want to make her uncomfortable. Siwa felt her heart race as she listened. After a brief pause, she gave a quiet nod, allowing him to continue. The atmosphere gradually softened, and the distance between them faded once again. The night unfolded with warmth and closeness, leaving both of them immersed in the moment they shared together. The next day, Siwa sat at her desk with complete focus, typing rapidly on her laptop. Her speed and precision caught the attention of the employees around her, who seemed surprised by her intensity. She kept her eyes fixed on the screen, fully absorbed in her work. In her thoughts, she reminded herself to focus only on her tasks and avoid thinking about anything else, especially the events of the previous night. Meanwhile, Jumu quietly observed her from a distance. Later, the two entered the elevator together. As the doors closed, Jumu leaned slightly closer and whispered that she did not give him even a single chance to hold her hand. Siwa lowered her voice and replied that they were at work, and besides, they had only been together for a week. Ji-hyun-moo questioned whether that really mattered. He mentioned Romeo and Juliet, saying they were in love for only 5 days, yet they went through so much together. Siwa responded that their story was different because they fell for each other at first sight. Ji-hyun-moo immediately replied that it was the same case with him, which caught her off guard. Seeing her reaction, he added that if she did not believe him, she could ask Director Kim. He explained that his behavior changed noticeably after she joined the company. Siwa looked at him with doubt and pointed out that he treated her harshly at first, even calling her ugly. Jongmu admitted that he acted immaturely back then. He explained that it was not easy for him to hide his feelings and assured her that he was serious about her now. He asked her to be a little patient with him as he tried to reflect on his actions and become a better person for her. He then asked if she did not feel at least a little sympathy for him, considering how long he kept his feelings hidden. As he spoke, he gently reached for her hand and held it. He asked her to promise that she would not leave him later, assuring her that he would try to control himself while they were at work. Siwa looked at him and replied softly that she would not let him go, and she asked him not to think about leaving her either. Jongmu smiled faintly and remarked that she sounded like she might actually hit him if he ever tried. Siwa affirmed confidently that she would. At that moment, the elevator doors opened. Siwa then mentioned that the meeting scheduled for the next day would take place in Incheon. However, as she glanced ahead, she noticed Jongmu suddenly pause. Following his gaze, she saw a woman standing in front of them. Jongmu looked visibly irritated and asked what she was doing there, addressing the woman as his mother. Inside the cabin, Mrs. Cha appeared cheerful as she gently lifted the cup and commented on how fragrant the tea was. She remarked that it was a fine choice, and praised Siwa's taste. Jongmu looked at her with a restrained expression and asked what she was doing there. Mrs. Cha responded lightly, asking if he could not simply smile, considering it had been 3 years. Jongmu corrected her calmly, stating that it had been exactly 2 years. She explained that although she moved to the United States 3 years ago, Jongmu let out a quiet sigh as he corrected her again that his friend's wedding was 2 years ago. Mrs. Cha paused, then admitted that he was right, and said she could not believe she forgot about it. Jongmu replied that it was probably because the moment was not important to her. Mrs. Cha groaned softly and asked him not to speak like that. She explained that she was simply getting older and sometimes forgot things. Ji-hyun-moo shifted the topic and asked if the chairman was doing well. Mrs. Cha answered that he was fine, though she recalled how he used to catch a bad cold every winter. Ji-hyun assured her that it was still the same, so she did not need to worry. He then asked why she suddenly came to Korea. Mrs. Cha replied that it should be obvious, as the date was approaching soon. Jungwoo's expression grew heavy as he understood her meaning. His gaze lowered slightly, and silence filled the room. Mrs. Cha's eyes grew moist as she told him he already knew the reason. Jungwoo responded in a restrained tone, saying she never cared about it before, so he did not understand why it mattered. Now, Mrs. Cha clenched her hands and explained that she recently saw her in a dream. She described how she appeared to be crying painfully, as if there were words left unsaid. After a brief pause, Mrs. Cha asked him if he still resented her. She admitted that she knew how close the two of them were, but she was also hurting in her own way. The scene shifted outside to Sola, who continued typing at her desk. Her thoughts wandered briefly as she reflected that she had never seen Jungwoo behave like that before. When she was asked earlier for a tea recommendation, she chose camellia flower tea. Mrs. Chow later complimented it, and Sola politely expressed her gratitude. However, Jungwoo maintained a stern expression and instructed her to return to work, which she accepted without question. Still, she felt that something about his interaction with his mother seemed distant and unusual. The phone suddenly rang, and Siwa answered it quickly. She listened carefully and felt concerned, thinking that Jungwoo might be experiencing another migraine, even though he recently took medicine. Afterward, she prepared a cup of vervain tea and brought it to him, explaining that she kept it stocked because she heard it was helpful. Jungwoo accepted it and thanked her. He then asked about the medicine. Siwa explained that she purchased it earlier and apologized for interrupting their conversation. Mrs. Cha gently dismissed the concern and told her not to worry. Siwa handed over the medicine but advised him to wait before taking it, as it had not been long since his last dose. Siwa then bowed politely to Mrs. Cha and said she would excuse herself before leaving the room. Once outside, Siwa let out a quiet sigh of relief. She thought she would feel more comfortable this time, yet the nervousness remained. She reflected on how awkward it felt to meet Jungwoo's mother, especially since he rarely spoke about her. The atmosphere inside still felt heavy, and it left her slightly uneasy. She also worried that he relied too much on migraine medicine. Back inside, Jungwoo stared at the medicine in silence. Mrs. Cha observed him and commented that it sounded like he experienced migraines often. Jungwoo replied that his workload kept him constantly occupied. Mrs. Cha mentioned that he seemed more relaxed when Siwa entered the room. She added that she did not expect anyone to soften his guarded nature. She admitted that she liked Siwa and believed she was a good person. Jungwoo responded quietly, saying Siwa was indeed a good person, perhaps even too good for him. His tone carried a hint of conflict as he looked away. Later that night, Siwa sat in her apartment, holding a pillow close. She thought about Jungwoo and wondered if he was feeling better. She believed he rarely expressed his emotions, even when something troubled him. As she remained lost in thought, Yoonshim suddenly spoke, asking who she was thinking about while spending time together. She jokingly told her not to make a single person feel jealous. Seolhye smiled slightly and asked if Yoonshim no longer had someone who made her heart race. Yoonshim replied that she forgot such feelings a long time ago. She then hugged Seolhye warmly and said she was happy that Seolhye finally worked things out with someone she liked. At that moment, an emergency broadcast appeared on the television, warning that the roads had become slippery due to a snowstorm, and advising everyone to be careful while returning home. Ji-hyun Sib stood up and switched the channel, complaining about having to wear too many layers during winter. Seolhye agreed, quietly noting that it was that time of the year again. Meanwhile, Jungwoo sat alone in his room, holding his head as a migraine slowly built. His thoughts returned to his mother's words about going together this year. He remembered how she spoke about the dream, where she seemed to cry as if something was left unsaid. His mind drifted further back to a snowy day 10 years ago. There had been a hit-and-run accident involving a drunk driver. The case ended with a penalty, though the driver ignored the victim despite knowing they were still alive. The memory stayed with him, which was why he always chose to drive himself, no matter how busy he became. He then looked at a photograph of his sister Hyun-young. His expression softened as he quietly wondered why she seemed to be crying in the dream. He questioned whether she felt lonely because he was the only one who visited her every year, or if there was something else troubling her. With growing concern, he reached for his phone and made a call. On the other end, someone answered. Jungwoo spoke in a serious tone and asked if they could talk. Jungwoo asked if they could talk for a moment. On the other side, the person questioned the reason for the sudden call. Jungwoo then asked if he was busy that weekend. His father replied that he had a golf meeting scheduled with Taekang's chairman. He mentioned that although it was called golf, it was mostly business in disguise. He then suggested that Jungwoo should join him and help him out. Jungwoo responded calmly, saying it seemed he was managing well on his own. His father insisted that it would not hurt to build connections and asked him to attend, but Jungwoo denied that he already had plans for the weekend. His father asked him to change them, saying the matter was important. Jungwoo repeated that his own plans were also important. After a brief pause, his father sighed and said it could not be helped. He then asked why Jungwoo called in the first place. Jungwoo answered that he simply thought he should start reaching out more often. His father dismissed it, telling him not to bother and to use the time to review another document instead. Jongwoo ended the call with a quiet sigh, thinking that his father seemed to have completely forgotten about her. The next day at the office, the employees talked excitedly about the company anniversary. Some expressed happiness about getting a day off, as they turned to Suwa and asked what she planned to do. Suwa replied that she intended to rest and sleep in. Her tired expression made her colleagues concerned, and they encouraged her to take proper rest. One of them handed her an energy drink, which she accepted while shivering slightly from exhaustion. Inside the cabin, Jongwoo focused on his documents while Siwa appeared slightly more energetic after the drink. As she observed him, she noticed a faint sadness in his expression. She considered asking him what was wrong, but before she could speak, Jongwoo called out to her. He mentioned that she looked tired and asked if she was all right. Siwa assured him that she was fine. Jongwoo then suggested that she should leave early, since he still had work to complete, to which she agreed and quietly stepped out. Leaving outside, Yuan Shim expressed her excitement about the upcoming day off, saying it was one of the best things about working there. Xiaoxiao nodded, though her thoughts remained elsewhere. She felt uneasy, realizing she did not get the chance to ask Jongwoo anything, and was now even more worried. After a moment, she turned to Yunshim and apologized, saying she needed to go back to see Jongwoo. Yunshim smiled and said she already suspected something like that, adding that there was no need to apologize. She encouraged Siwa to go, and Siwa quickly left. Back inside the cabin, Jongwoo sat alone, his expression tense as memories surfaced. He recalled his sister's voice asking if he bought the item she wanted. She sounded cheerful as she mentioned finally getting Rudolph, something she wished for the previous year. Jongwoo remembered apologizing, explaining that he could not accompany her due to a last-minute meeting. Yuan responded gently, saying it was all right. Suddenly, a loud screeching sound echoed, and a huge accident occurred. He remembered calling out to her, asking if she was okay, but no response came. He continued shouting her name, hoping she could hear him. Jongwoo suddenly returned to the present, his body tense and covered in sweat. Before he could gather himself, Siwa's voice came from behind, asking if he was all right. Without thinking, he pulled her into a tight embrace. He called her name softly and then asked what she was doing there. Siwa replied that she came back to wait for him. Jongwoo noticed a coat placed over him and questioned it. Siwa explained that she did not want him to feel cold. She also added that he could talk to her if something was troubling him, even if she might not be able to help much. Jongwoo assumed she was still thinking about his mother's visit. Jongwoo admitted she might be a little sensitive, but he tried to reassure her, saying he was simply tired and did not intend to worry her. He apologized, but Siwa shook her head, saying it was fine. Jongwoo then held her hand gently and said that something felt different. Siwa looked at him, confused. He brought her hand closer and rested it against his face, saying he did not think he could ever let it go. His words made her blush as she questioned what he was saying. He then asked if she had any plans for the night. Siwa replied that she came back only to wait for him. Jongwoo nodded and said they should leave. Siwa asked where they were going, but Jongwoo simply placed the coat around her shoulders and said there was something more important than work. Later, at his apartment, Jongwoo prepared a meal while Seosha changed into more comfortable clothes. When she returned, he asked if the clothes fit her. He mentioned they were the smallest he had. Seosha replied that they were slightly loose but manageable. Seeing her in his own clothes, Jongwoo immediately averted his gaze in a blush. Seola looked around and noticed how clean and organized his home was compared to hers. Jihyunmoo then served her a beautifully prepared dish. She felt slightly nervous as she sat down. Jihyunmoo asked why she seemed uneasy and encouraged her to eat. Seola tasted the food, and Jihyunmoo watched her reaction closely, asking if it was good. She nodded, appreciating the effort. Afterward, they sat together watching television. A horror movie played, and Siwa seemed quite engaged, enjoying the scenes. Jongwoo, however, appeared more scared, as he covered his eyes. At one point, Siwa pointed at the screen excitedly, and without realizing it, her hand brushed against his thigh. She quickly pulled away and apologized, feeling embarrassed, but Jongwoo looked at her and remarked that if she wanted to touch him, she could simply say so. Siwa tried to deny it, insisting it was accidental, but Jongwoo gently held her hand. He asked if she truly intended to keep her distance, then pulled her slightly closer. Siwa remained caught in her thoughts, as one side of her mind questioned whether she truly intended to touch him at all, while the other affirmed that she needed to touch him. Before she could settle her confusion, Jongwoo gently pulled her closer, though his tone softened as he remarked that he would not force her if she did not wish to continue. His words took her by surprise, and she quickly responded that she never said she did not want to. Jongwoo then asked whether it would be alright if they did not finish the movie. Siwa quietly nodded in agreement. A moment later, she leaned forward and placed a soft kiss on his cheek. In response, Jongwoo lifted her chin with a gentle touch and moved closer, closing the distance between them as he kissed her. He drew her onto him, and the quiet tension between them slowly melted into warmth. The night passed in a blur of shared closeness, leaving both of them wrapped in a sense of comfort and unspoken understanding. The following morning felt calm in contrast. Siwa stood near the kitchen, drinking water slowly, when Jongwoo approached her from behind and wrapped his arms around her. She questioned how long he intended to remain like that. Jongwoo responded lightly, explaining that he had strained himself the previous night, so he was merely offering his support. He added that she should not forget it was her decision to take the lead. Siwa immediately tried to cover his mouth, denying his claim and insisting it did not happen in the way he described. Her cheeks turned red as Jang-moo continued teasing, asking whether she enjoyed touching him so freely. She lowered her gaze, unable to hide her embarrassment, and remarked that he was teasing her again. After a brief pause, Jung-moo asked whether she wanted to take a bath. Siwa hesitated and asked if she was expected to go alone. He replied with a faint smile, saying he would gladly join her, though he admitted he was not confident he would behave himself if they shared the bath. His words made her hesitate further, and she quickly responded that she could not manage anything more. Jong-moo reassured her in a calm tone, stating he would simply hold her and do nothing else. When she questioned whether he could promise that, he gave his word without hesitation. He then stepped back, mentioning that he would prepare the bathtub himself. Siwa seemed surprised and asked whether he truly intended to do it alone. He nodded, telling her not to lift a finger, as she already took care of enough at work. His gesture left her smiling softly. Soon they found themselves sitting together in the warm water. Siwa felt the heat ease her tension, and the quiet atmosphere brought a sense of peace. Jung-moo leaned closer and spoke in a low voice, thanking her sincerely. He admitted that he had been trapped in a cycle of struggles and burdens for a long time, and her presence felt like an unexpected gift in his life. Siwa listened carefully before responding in a gentle tone. She expressed her gratitude as well, saying she felt the same way. Jang-moo looked at her with quiet relief and drew her closer, stating he was glad to hear it. After a brief silence, he brushed his hand over her face and leaned in, pressing a soft kiss against her. Just as the moment deepened, Sirlo suddenly flinched as her stomach made a faint sound. Both of them paused, and Jong-moo could not help but let out a small laugh. Embarrassed, Sirlo lowered her head and warned him not to laugh, saying she felt extremely awkward. She blamed him, mentioning that he had completely drained her energy. Jong-moo smiled at her reaction and told her not to look at him with such an expression, as it only made him want to kiss her again. Siwa responded with mild frustration, asking whether he always needed to joke in such moments. He replied honestly, saying he meant every word, which only made her splash water toward him in playful protest. After finishing their bath, Siwa stepped out and began to dry herself. When her phone suddenly rang, it made her check the screen as she noticed it was Director Park calling. She answered promptly, maintaining a composed tone as she spoke. While moving around, she accidentally tumbled across her box placed nearby. As Ji-hyun-moo opened it slightly, a figurine slipped into view. While Seo-ha informed Director Park that she would recheck the matter and provide an update the next day before ending the call. Meanwhile, Ji-hyun-moo paused as his gaze fell upon the Rudolph figurine inside. His expression changed subtly as he continued to stare at it. Seo-ha noticed his silence and called out to him, asking whether he was all right. Jong-moo rose slowly, trying to steady his thoughts as he mentioned that he was unsure whether she liked the figurines from that particular company. Seo-ha looked slightly surprised and asked if he actually knew about them, adding that they were not especially popular. Jong-moo replied in a calm tone that he had seen them around from time to time and then asked whether she collected them every season. Seo-ha shook her head and clarified that she did not collect every season, only the winter editions. Jong-moo then asked if there was any specific figurine she wanted. Siwa nodded without hesitation and said it was Rudolph. Her answer seemed to catch him off guard for a moment. She added softly that she found it the cutest among all the designs. Sensing the shift in mood, Jong-moo tried to ease the moment and asked whether she felt hungry, telling her to inform him if she wanted anything. Siwa quickly denied it and suggested that she could make something for him instead. However, Jong-moo refused politely, saying it was not necessary, though she still insisted lightly before letting the matter drop. The next day, Jong-moo sat at his desk, tapping his fingers against the chair in a restless rhythm. His thoughts lingered on the figurine he had seen earlier, and he could not help but feel unsettled. He never expected her to own such a piece, and the realization stayed with him longer than he intended. He let out a quiet sigh, trying to focus back on his work. At that moment, Mrs. Cha called out to him. She mentioned that she had been thinking about preparing something for him, questioning what he wanted to eat. Jong-moo declined calmly, stating that he was fine and could manage his meals on his own. He added casually that she still went grocery shopping whenever there were sales, even though he had given her his credit card. Mrs. Cha responded with a small smile, saying it felt wasteful to spend too much on food, as she could not easily give up her old habits. She continued, mentioning that she planned to stay at her hotel over the weekend. Mrs. Chair then added cheerfully that she would prepare stir-fried anchovies for him when he visited, as she knew it was his favorite. Hearing this, Jong-moo raised a hand to his eyes, his expression briefly shifting. He murmured quietly that it used to be Hyun-young's favorite. Then he quickly brushed it off, telling Mrs. Chair not to trouble herself with cooking for him and to simply enjoy her stay in Korea. Later, Taegun went shopping as he entered confidently. His presence immediately drew attention, and several employees glanced at him in admiration as he walked toward the Kelbemis section. His gaze briefly fell upon Sialha, who remained focused on choosing some gift. She was lost in her own thoughts as she imagined how each outfit might look on Jung-moo, which caused her to shake her head in mild embarrassment. She reminded herself to stop thinking that way, though the thoughts continued to return. She wondered which item would make a suitable gift for him. At the same time, she recalled how last year, he had instructed her to return all the birthday gifts he received that year. He had explained that once he started accepting gifts, it would never end, and he had asked her to issue a notice about it. She had followed his instructions back then, even though she had also bought something for him. Now she reflected on how she had been unable to give him anything because of that policy. Yet things were different now. She was no longer just his employee. She was his girlfriend, and the thought made her feel both nervous and quietly happy. Her thoughts were interrupted when Taegun let out a small laugh upon noticing her expression. He approached her and asked casually who she was choosing the clothes for, wondering if it was for her boyfriend. But the words didn't even land on her ears as her phone rang. She excused herself quickly, saying she would return shortly, leaving Taegun slightly surprised as he watched her leave after completely ignoring him. Siwa met Yoonshim outside. Yoonshim stretched slightly and remarked how refreshing it felt to get some fresh air, to which Siwa asked if she had dealt with many customers that day. Yoonshim immediately expressed her frustration, mentioning a customer who kept insisting a product was new even though it had clearly been used. She added that the customer even claimed there was a fault, which only made the situation more exhausting. Jiwon-shim then mentioned that the customer happened to be none other than Taegun, the eldest son of Taekong Group. Hearing this, Siwa recalled the rumors connected to Jongmu's engagement. The thought made her sob for a brief moment. Jiwon-shim quickly added that it was not the main issue and moved on, mentioning that a new limited edition watch had arrived and he had come to purchase it. Siwa asked whether it suited his style, and Yoonshim nodded, saying it matched him quite well. She even joked that he carried himself like he was a prince and was just as attractive as Jungmu. Siwa immediately disagreed, stating firmly that no one could compare, as she believed Jungmu was the most attractive man in the world. At that moment, a voice from behind asked if she truly believed that. Without thinking, Siwa affirmed it again. She then opened her eyes, only to find Jungmu standing there. Her eyes widened in surprise. Yoonshim teased lightly, asking if he had come to pick Siwa up, to which he affirmed, mentioning that it was impossible to reach her whenever she was with her. Siwa apologized, explaining that she had not noticed her phone ringing. When she looked around again, she realized Yuan-shim had already left quietly, which confused her. Jungmu remarked that he should thank Yuan-shim for giving them time to walk together. Siwa hesitated, expressing concern about possible rumors if they were seen together. Jungmu responded calmly, saying it would not be a bad thing, as it meant they would no longer need to hide their relationship. As they walked, Ji-hyun-moo asked if he could hold her hand. Seo-lee refused firmly. He then suggested a kiss, which she rejected even more strongly. Ji-hyun-moo let out a soft laugh, and then mentioned that he would not be able to meet her over the weekend, as he had a personal matter to attend to. Siwa asked about it, and he explained that he planned to meet his mother. He admitted that they had not seen each other in a long time, making the situation feel somewhat awkward. Siwa understood then why he had appeared uneasy earlier. Jungmu added quietly that he was already looking forward to finishing work for the day, to which Siwa affirmed in response. Not far away, someone secretly captured a picture of them together. The employee who took it giggled softly, commenting on how interesting their relationship seemed. The photo was quickly sent to Taegun. Taehyun looked at the image on his phone and paused. As he studied it more closely, recognition slowly appeared on her face. He realized that he had seen the girl before. A faint smile formed as he understood the situation, that she was Jongmu's girlfriend. In the office, as Ji-hyun was signing his documents, he was seen thinking quietly. He took a moment to lean back and relax, glancing at the calendar as the weekend seemed close. Meanwhile, Seolha was typing at her desk when she suddenly received a call from Ji-hyun regarding the pen. He mentioned that he liked the one he was currently using and asked her to let him know where it was, adding that he would find it himself. Seolha refused, stating that she would come immediately. She soon entered the cabin and opened the drawer, explaining that she had bought several refills after noticing that he always used that particular fountain pen. Ji-hyun looked at her and asked her to hand it to him, saying he would take care of it himself. He thanked her for coming even though she must have been busy, and remarked that it was nice to see her. Seolha became embarrassed and avoided his gaze, reminding him that she had told him not to look at her like that during work hours. Jingmo leaned forward and held her lightly, teasing, as he asked if she did not want to leave work early. He mentioned that he would prefer to leave at that very moment. Seolha refused, saying she had something urgent to handle and would be leaving now. She hurried out of the cabin, clearly flustered, while Jungmu watched her with a faint grin. Outside, Solya felt that she needed to be more careful at work. Suddenly, she overheard employees talking nearby. They mentioned that Jungmu and his fiancée were going to meet each other's parents for dinner that week. Another person added that it would probably take place at an expensive restaurant and expressed jealousy. The other commented that they would make a beautiful couple and mentioned how attractive the Taekong siblings were. Solya listened as they discussed Jungmu's dinner plans with his fiancée, though she recalled that he had previously dismissed it as a ridiculous rumor. She clenched her hands, thinking that she should have asked him directly for a clear answer. She remembered that he had mentioned having personal plans for the weekend. Then again, she also had plans during the same time, so she tried to convince herself that it might simply be something similar. The next morning, Suwa was at Yoonshim's apartment, looking exhausted. Yoonshim complained that she always ended up going alone, and mentioned that she had even woken up early to go with her without informing her beforehand. However, she noticed that Suwa had already made the trip herself and jokingly called her Miss Quickfeet. Suwa explained that she did not want to trouble her, and thanked her for always caring about her. As she sat there, her expression frowned, and her thoughts drifted to a memory from the past. She recalled the moment when the prosecutor had questioned Mr. Min, her father, about whether he still could not remember anything after seeing the evidence. The prosecutor had stated that the victim had been returning home with a figurine she had always wanted, though it was now completely shattered. Mr. Min had remained silent for a while before apologizing, saying that he did not remember. Solzia had flinched at his words. Since that day, she had developed a habit of bringing a figurine to the cemetery. She always visited a day before the death anniversary to avoid encountering her family. She understood that this did not change anything, yet the image of the broken figurine stayed in her mind, making it difficult for her to move on. Back in the present, Yoon-seom asked what had happened with the dinner plan involving Jong-moo. Hee-hwa replied that she had not asked him about it yet. Yoon-seom stated that from the way he looked at her, she doubted that he would ever be interested in another woman. She added that Siwa had already met his parents, though Siwa laughed lightly and said it did not count. Yoon-seom responded firmly, saying that regardless of the situation, he should not hurt her. She added that she did not care if he was their CEO and that she would be ready to quit her job if necessary. Yuan-shim then mentioned that the Amor Hotel was hosting a year-end event the following day and suggested they should go there. Siwa asked whether they would need an invitation since it was a luxury hotel. Yuan-shim explained that it was open to the public for free because it was their 50th anniversary and suggested they should watch the fireworks. She then added that they should rest for the day. Later, at the Amor Hotel, the place was filled with people and lively activity. Jung-woo felt pleased that he had arrived early, as it gave him time to look around. He even considered the idea of starting a hotel business himself. Suddenly, a voice called out to him from behind, addressing him as Oppa, which made him stop. A young woman approached, recognizing him immediately. Jung-woo greeted her and mentioned that it had been a while. She responded that this was likely their first meeting since she graduated from college. She said she had missed him and asked how he had been. She moved closer and held on to him, becoming affectionate. From a distance, Siwa witnessed the interaction. Yoon-shim suggested that they should go closer to look at the fountain, mentioning how beautiful it was. Siwa, however, remarked that the woman looked exactly like the person she had seen in an article. Cho Kang-hee, the youngest daughter of the Taekang group, she remembered that Jong-woo had said he had plans with his mother and thought that he might not have been ready to introduce her to his fiancée. Siwa then called out to Yoon-shim, saying that she needed to use the restroom quickly before they continued. Yoon-shim noticed her pale expression and pointed it out, but Siwa noted that she had come to enjoy the day with her and suggested they discuss everything another time. She added that she would ask about it the next day. As she moved toward the restroom, Taegun stepped out towards the restroom. He appeared frustrated, wondering where Kang-hee was, as she had been the one who insisted he attend the event. At that moment, a lipstick rolled near his foot, which irritated him. He stepped on it and moved forward. Ji-hyun-shim immediately shouted at him, questioning why he would kick someone else's belongings and stopping him in his tracks. She stated that the least he could do was pick it up. Taegun scoffed and replied that it should not have been dropped in the first place, which surprised Yoon-shim. But noticing her beautiful face, he smirked as he added that if she was truly upset, he would apologize. He handed her his visiting card and told her to call him if she wanted compensation. Yuan-shim, confused by his words, questioned what he meant. Taegun responded with a faint smirk, giving off an unsettling impression. Yuan-shim dismissed the matter, stating that she did not need any compensation. However, Taegun slipped his card into her hand and told her to call him whenever she needed it, before walking away. Yuan-shim stood there, wondering why he had forced his business card on her. As she looked at it, she realized he was Taegun. It then occurred to her why he had seemed so familiar. She recalled hearing rumors about him. Although he was known as a young businessman and the prospective successor of the Taekang group, he was also described as someone difficult to manage, often causing trouble for the company. She scoffed quietly, thinking that even if he was capable at work, his unpleasant personality could not be hidden. At that moment, Siwa approached from behind and called out to Yoon-shim, asking where she had been going. Yoon-seo replied that she had been trying to avoid someone she described as a piece of trash, which left Siwa confused. Yoon-shim then cleared her throat and suggested they should go and look around the venue. Siwa agreed, though she felt a quiet heaviness inside. She decided not to let her feelings ruin the mood of their outing. She thought it would be better to set aside what she had seen earlier and bring it up at another time. The scene shifted to Jong-moo, where Kang-hee was lightly brushing his coat, saying that something seemed to be on it and asking if it was lint. Jong-moo asked her to leave it, mentioning that people might misunderstand the situation. He noted that others were already talking about the daughter of the Taekang group and the CEO of Venus, suggesting that the rumors about their engagement might be true. Kang-hee commented that he appeared to be as popular as ever. She added that a small misunderstanding did not bother her. Jong-moo cleared his throat and avoided her gaze, stating that it bothered him. Kang-hee then asked if he had a girlfriend, mentioning that he had never dated anyone during their school days, making a sad face. The expression struck Jong-moo as his sister's face flashed before him as to make him sigh. He remarked that he was expected to meet someone soon, adding that he needed to leave. Kang-hee suggested that they should have dinner together sometime, to which Jong-moo replied that he was currently seeing someone and suggested they could catch up if they met again at a future event. He then excused himself and walked away, leaving Kang-hee heartbroken. She reflected on his words, noting that he was seeing someone. Meanwhile, Jungwoo found himself wondering if Hyun-young would have grown into someone like that after 10 years, and he let out a quiet sigh. The scene then shifted, where Mrs. Cha mentioned that nuts were said to help with migraines and handed him some supplements as well. She also gave him a coat to wear at work during colder days, and mentioned that another item was for Soshela. Jungwoo appeared slightly taken aback by this. Noting his reaction, Mrs. Cha asked whether the two of them were dating, mentioning that she had enjoyed the tea served at the office, and that she would visit again when she had the chance. Jungwoo replied that they would visit her as well when they could next time. Mrs. Cha felt touched upon hearing this and expressed her happiness. Jungwoo cleared his throat and suggested that they should get going. At the cemetery, Mrs. Cha sat toward the tombstone, saying that it was her first time visiting and that she had brought several things along. Her eyes filled with tears as she mentioned that the items had not even been expensive and that she should have bought such things earlier. Jungwoo looked away, unable to manage his emotions. Mrs. Cha then called out to him and apologized, saying that she had left him to carry everything on his own. She admitted that she should not have left him like that, but explained that she had been unable to accept Hyun-young's death. She continued to apologize, her voice breaking. Jungwoo responded that he regretted it every day, saying that he should not have allowed her to go alone and that things might have been different if he had gone with her. Mrs. Cha shook her head and told him that it was not his fault, asking him not to blame himself. Later, the scene shifted to Jungwoo's apartment. Seeing the bag, he recalled Mrs. Cha asking whether he had placed a certain item inside, mentioning that Hyun-young had loved that particular figurine. She had suggested that perhaps one of Hyun-young's friends had left it. Jungwoo reflected on how, every year on Hyun-young's death anniversary, someone left a figurine at his grave, and he had always assumed it was from a friend or acquaintance. He noted that this year it was a snowman figurine. He remembered that Siwa had a similar one, and thought about how coincidental it seemed. Suddenly, he received a message from his mother, thanking him for driving her and expressing her appreciation. Jungwoo responded by suggesting that they should meet a little earlier next time and perhaps have tea together. Mrs. Cha smiled upon reading the message, thinking that even if he appeared awkward, he remained the same at heart. The following day at the office, Jungwoo was accompanied by Solha during a field inspection. Jungwoo asked about how the employees were being treated, noting that there had been issues that required attention. He gave instructions regarding the frequency of hygiene inspections as well. After reviewing several reports, he mentioned that he had likely covered all the necessary locations and that the reports would be sufficient. Siwa-ha appeared exhausted, having been unable to sleep due to thoughts about the rumored fiancé. She felt that she could not continue like this and decided that she needed to speak with him that day. Just then, Jungwoo called her name and asked if she had time later. Siwa-ha paused and a sudden thought crossed her mind. She wondered if he intended to have a serious conversation, possibly even to dump her or inform her about his wedding with Kang-hee. Observing his serious expression, she felt uneasy. At that moment, an employee approached and asked if the CEO had a moment. Ji-hyun turned to him and inquired about the matter. The employee reported that Taegun from the Taekang group had arrived, which surprised Ji-hyun. As Solha served tea in front of them, she politely stated that they could call her if they needed anything before stepping out of the office. Watching her leave, Jungwoo remarked that he did not remember arranging any meeting with Taegun. Taegun casually replied that he merely missed his old friend and wished to see him again. He further added that they might even become brothers-in-law someday, causing Jungwoo to pause briefly. Noticing the reaction, Taegun questioned what was wrong and remarked that although Kang-hee could sometimes be excessive, she was still a good person. Jungwoo quietly stated that he had not realized the two of them were that close. Taegun remarked that Kang-hee had been disappointed that their meeting at the hotel had ended so quickly, and questioned why Jungwoo never seriously considered dating her. Jungwoo remained silent at the remark. Taegun then mentioned that he wished to work together as partners, though Jungwoo inwardly concluded that Taegun simply wanted to establish connections with Venus rather than compete against them. Taegun urged him to think about it carefully, remarking that even the chairman would likely approve since it would benefit both sides unless there was some reason he could not accept. He then questioned whether the reason involved the secretary from earlier. Later, after leaving the office, Taegun's secretary questioned whether he wished to look around before departing, but Taegun declined, stating that there was no need. While smoking outside, he reflected that everything had unfolded exactly as he had predicted. He recalled Jungwoo's expression when he had brought up the subject earlier and wondered how frustrated he might eventually become. He also remembered how Jungwoo had remarked that Taegun seemed interested in Miss Solha, though unfortunately she already had a boyfriend. Taegun had questioned whether that was truly the case, inwardly noting how calm Jungwoo had appeared throughout the conversation. Even now, he thought that Jungwoo had never once allowed him to stand above him during their school years, and today was no different. In the present, Taegun notes the Taekang department store would soon open, and if he could not establish ties by becoming family, then another method would be necessary. At that moment, a message arrived on his phone informing him that the overseas shipment had been secured. Taegun calmly instructed them to leave it in the trunk for now. Kim Sung-chan informed him that the Venus chairman still appeared unaware of the matter. causing Taegon to smirk as he remarked how fitting the headline would sound if news spread that Venus CEO Jungmoo had cheated on his fiancée with his secretary. At that moment, Solha called out to Eunshim nearby, drawing Taegon's attention toward them. Eunshim brightly questioned how Solha had known she had been craving strawberries, remarking that she truly resembled an angel. Solha softly replied that she had only noticed it earlier and mentioned that she would be leaving work with Jungmoo that evening because they planned to have dinner together. Though she smiled outwardly, Solha inwardly worried about Director Tae's unexpected visit earlier that day. Eunshim, however, held her hand and comforted her by stating that she needed to honestly express everything on her mind that night. She further remarked that honesty had always been Solha's best quality and that she should not forget it now. Solha thanked her sincerely and promised that she would settle everything that very day. Later that evening during dinner, Solha found herself unable to bring up the subject, despite repeatedly preparing herself to do so. Feeling nervous, she suddenly coughed, causing Jungmoo to question whether she was alright. Embarrassed, Solha replied that she had merely swallowed incorrectly. Afterwards, as they walked outside together, Solha quietly clung to his arm while they moved down the street. Jungmoo suddenly apologized, causing her to freeze in confusion. He explained that he had been worried the rumors regarding his engagement had affected her. He admitted that he had not considered the matter serious at first, though many people appeared to have misunderstood his weekend plans. He revealed that he had actually gone to visit his sister's grave alongside his mother. Surprised, Solha quietly questioned him about it, prompting Jungmoo to explain that his sister had passed away 10 years earlier due to an accident, and that he usually visited her alone every year. However, his mother had chosen to accompany him this time. Hearing this, Solha's eyes filled with tears as she embraced him tightly, apologizing for misunderstanding him and admitting that she had no idea about his past. Jungmoo gently reassured her that it was understandable for such thoughts to trouble her. Solha tearfully admitted that she should have asked him sooner but had been afraid that the rumors might truly be real. She apologized again for making him revisit such painful memories. However, Jungmoo calmly remarked that he would be more careful in the future so misunderstandings like this would not spread again, gently asking her not to cry anymore. That night, the two of them spent a long time talking together. Jungmoo spoke about his childhood, his life with his mother, and the experiences that had shaped him while growing up. Through the conversation, Solha gradually felt that she had come to understand him far better than before. The following morning at Venus, several colleagues cheerfully remarked that the weekend was finally approaching, while another jokingly stated that she intended to spend the entire time sleeping. However, their attention quickly shifted towards Solha as they approached her desk and questioned what she wanted for breakfast. Solha apologized softly while attempting to stand, though the coworkers immediately stopped speaking after noticing how exhausted she looked. They quietly whispered among themselves, wondering whether she was sick or perhaps suffering from a difficult breakup. Shortly afterwards, Solha entered Jungwoo's office and handed him the organized reports for next week's meeting, explaining that she had printed and arranged all the necessary materials beforehand. Jungwoo thanked her before carefully observing her face. Gently touching beneath her eyes, he remarked that they looked badly swollen. Solha awkwardly replied that she had applied ice before sleeping the previous night, prompting Jungwoo to lightly scold her by remarking that he had specifically told her not to continue crying. Embarrassed, Solha quietly replied that once she started, it had become difficult to stop. Attempting to change the subject, she asked him to review the reports and inform her if anything else was required. After briefly glancing through them, Jungwoo stated that the reports were already more than sufficient. He then pulled her slightly closer and remarked that what he truly needed now was Min Solha. Confused by the sudden statement, Solha questioned what he meant, only for Jungwoo to casually remark that lunchtime was approaching soon and that they could always lock the office door. Solha immediately became flushed, her thoughts turning chaotic as she quietly remarked that it was true. Jungwoo pulled her slightly closer and teasingly stated that she truly was a mischievous person, remarking that she seemed to entertain increasingly improper thoughts whenever he looked at her. Embarrassed, Solha whispered that she had only been trying to explain herself. However, before the conversation could continue further, a sudden knock sounded at the office door. An assistant's voice came in, stating that the department head was currently away and questioning whether Jungwoo had received the report yet, asking if he could quickly confirm it. Jungwoo calmly replied that he would check it shortly since he was slightly occupied at the moment, additionally thanking him for bringing it over. The moment the knock had sounded, Solha had hurried behind Jungwoo and concealed herself behind his shoulder just in time. Letting out a relieved breath afterward, she quietly remarked that she had barely managed to hide in time and that it had been far too close. Jungwoo, however, looked slightly disappointed as he remarked that the situation was unfortunate. He admitted that he disliked the fact that they constantly had to conceal everything from others. Solha softly pleaded with him to endure it for a little longer, reminding him that things would become troublesome if anyone discovered them now. After the assistant's footsteps faded away, Jungwoo questioned what plans Solha had for the upcoming weekend. Solha replied that she did not really have anything planned. Hearing this, Jungwoo smiled faintly and remarked that he had already finished his work in advance, specifically so he could spend more time with her. He added that there were still many things the two of them had yet to do together, causing Solha to quietly look away in embarrassment. Solha became slightly embarrassed as she realized that Jungwoo truly took advantage of every opportunity he could find. Tugging lightly on his tie, she called out to him and warned that if he continued seducing her like that, she would refuse to kiss him anymore. However, before Jungwoo could properly respond, Solha leaned closer and placed a quick kiss upon his forehead instead, immediately leaving him flustered. Jungwoo awkwardly remarked that they should not behave like that inside the office, but by the time he finished speaking, Solha had already hurried away toward the hallway. She waved goodbye while running off, leaving Jungwoo staring after her with a helpless sigh as he remarked that she always managed to leave him completely worked up before disappearing. As Solha stepped outside, she overheard several colleagues thanking the security team nearby. Her attention shifted toward one particular guard, who strangely seemed familiar to her. The man suddenly glanced back in her direction, causing Solha to quietly decide that it would be better for her to leave quickly instead of lingering there any longer. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Taegun impatiently tapped against the table while waiting. Kang Hee questioned who exactly the woman was that had caught his interest so much. Taegun casually replied that she was far better than her, instantly irritating her. Kang Hee sharply remarked that he practically said the same thing about every woman he encountered. However, Taegun remarked that if she remained that curious about Solha, then she should accompany him to the next meeting with Jungwoo. Kang Hee immediately refused, stating that she would figure things out on her own. Before leaving, she coldly warned him that things would not end well if he continued provoking Venus and reminded him that his own record was far from clean. She additionally remarked that he should abandon his drug habits while he still could. Taegun merely smirked after she left, quietly stating that even if things ended badly, it was still preferable to doing nothing at all. Later that night, Solha lay awake upon her bed while staring toward the ceiling, her heartbeat refusing to calm down. The thought of traveling together with Jungwoo filled her with so much excitement that sleep no longer seemed possible. She had already mentally planned nearly everything they could do together during the trip. While she remained lost in those thoughts, her phone suddenly rang beside her. Surprised, she quickly picked it up and realized that Jungwoo was calling. Jungwoo immediately questioned whether he had accidentally woken her up, but Solha softly denied it, admitting that she had not fallen asleep yet. Hearing that, Jungwoo remarked that it was fortunate. Curious, Solha questioned why he had suddenly called her so late at night, only for Jungwoo to casually confess that he simply missed her. The unexpected answer caused Solha to smile unconsciously. Jungwoo then remarked that he wished tomorrow would arrive faster and jokingly added that perhaps he should have simply stayed the night at her place instead. Embarrassed, Solha questioned whether she should come over immediately. Her response briefly caught Jungwoo off guard before he remarked that there would not even be anywhere to park at this hour and that she was likely already tired. However, he quickly added that she should simply remain where she was because he would rather come to her himself since he missed her too. Still teasing her, he questioned what would happen if she became too sleepy by tomorrow to spend time with him properly. Solha immediately denied that possibility, insisting that she would absolutely not be sleepy at all. The following day, during their trip together, Solha excitedly pointed toward the distant sea and remarked that the water looked beautiful, even from afar. However, Jungwoo suddenly questioned whether she was feeling unwell. Solha denied it, though Jungwoo immediately followed up by questioning whether she was hungry instead, so as to make Solha admit that she was. Despite her words, the two of them spent the day enjoying themselves together. They shared lunch and snacks, walked peacefully alongside the beach, and spent hours simply talking with each other. As evening approached, Solha softly remarked that she had truly enjoyed the day, and that it had been a very long time since she had last visited the beach like this. While they stood together near the shore, Jungwoo quietly called out to Solha before honestly confessing that he truly liked her. The sudden sincerity in his voice caused Solha to fall silent. Jungwoo continued by admitting that his feelings for her were far stronger than she probably realized. Hearing those words, Solha gently tightened her grip around his hand and confessed that she truly liked him as well. Jungwoo quietly remarked that he wished they could remain there for several more days instead of returning so soon. Solha smiled softly and replied that there would always be another opportunity in the future. Later that night, the two of them stopped by a grilled and steamed food shop before heading back. After finishing the meal, Solha remarked that she was already completely full, prompting Jungwoo to state that they would probably need to skip dessert afterward. However, Solha quickly denied that suggestion, insisting that there was always room for dessert and mentioning that she thought she had noticed a cake shop nearby earlier. Just as she prepared to leave, Solha suddenly realized that she had accidentally left her phone back at the table. Embarrassed by her carelessness, she hurried back inside while quietly scolding herself for forgetting something so important simply because she had been having too much fun. However, upon returning, she noticed Jungwoo speaking with another woman nearby. Immediately, Solha called out toward him and jokingly questioned whether he had started flirting with another woman the moment she stepped away. Jungwoo smiled at the accusation and questioned whether she had become jealous. Solha instantly denied it, though Jungwoo explained that the woman had merely asked him for directions and that he had informed her he was unfamiliar with the area himself. Solha crossed her arms and remarked that she already knew because she had overheard everything. Jungwoo then teased her by remarking that she had still looked prettier. Solha let out an embarrassed groan, only for Jungwoo to chuckle and clarify that he had been referring to his girlfriend, who had approached him earlier with a jealous expression on her face. Afterwards, fireworks illuminated the night sky nearby. The two of them spent the rest of the evening in the car, enjoying themselves privately. As they were about to proceed, Jungwoo questioned whether things felt too cramped around them, saying that it would not take too much time to reach the hotel. But Solha simply wrapped her arms around him and replied that it was too far. Jungwoo gently kissed her forehead before quietly admitting that, truthfully, he completely agreed with her. As fireworks illuminated the night sky, Solha and Jungwoo continued enjoying themselves. Jungwoo quietly remarked that things were becoming dangerous because she truly needed to learn a little more patience. Embarrassed by his teasing tone, Solha asked him to stop tempting her like that. However, Jungwoo simply smiled and admitted that he honestly wanted to continue tempting her, though for now they should simply enjoy the evening together since he had already left certain things back at the hotel. Later that night, after returning to the hotel, the two of them spent peaceful and private time together, enjoying each other's company without interruption. Meanwhile, Taegun sat alone at a hotel bar while drinking. His expression gradually darkened as memories resurfaced in his mind. He recalled being slapped by his father, who had angrily questioned how much longer he intended to continue wasting investments. His father had demanded to know what was supposedly so special about Venus and had sharply remarked that the chairman had suddenly begun favoring Jungwoo simply because the two of them had attended the same university. Taegun still remembered being questioned about why he could not become just as successful as Jungwoo and whether he would ever manage to reach the same level. Even now, the memory irritated him deeply. Thinking back on the way Jungwoo had looked at Solha earlier, Taegun quietly concluded that Jungwoo was genuinely serious about her. At that moment, a knock sounded at the hotel room door before a man entered carrying a briefcase. The man nervously explained that he had brought everything Taegun had requested. Taegun coldly questioned why it had taken so long just to deliver a few drugs, causing the man to quickly apologize and explain that avoiding the authorities had recently become increasingly difficult. He additionally informed Taegun that the rumors involving Jungwoo and Solha had already begun spreading throughout Venus and that Chairman Chow would likely hear about them soon. However, before he could continue, Taegun suddenly struck him with an ashtray so as to make him groan. Taegun angrily remarked that he had ordered the task to be completed much earlier and questioned whether the man even understood how much money he was being paid. He further stated that he would personally tell Chairman Chow himself since they were already scheduled to play golf together later that week. After calming down slightly, Taegun mockingly remarked that perhaps falling for secretaries simply ran within the family. Though his tone sounded casual, he inwardly wondered just how badly he should destroy the relationship between Jungwoo and Solha. The following day, Solha sat together with Jungwoo while opening a can of beer. Cheerfully, she admitted that she had always wanted to casually sit and drink beer together with him someday. She questioned whether he was actually a good drinker since she had never once properly seen him drink alcohol before. As Jungwoo sat beside her, Solha pointed out that even during formal dinners he would usually order alcohol but barely touch the glass at all. In response, Jungwoo calmly explained that he disliked losing control of himself and did not wish to end up doing something he might regret afterward. He additionally admitted that he simply did not enjoy becoming drunk. However, barely 10 minutes later, Jungwoo completely passed out after drinking only a single can of beer. Startled, Solha called out to him before realizing in disbelief that one can truly seem to be his limit. Sitting down beside him, she smiled helplessly while thinking that he could have simply admitted it honestly from the start. Moments later, Jungwoo softly mumbled in his sleep while calling out for Solha. In a dazed voice, he asked her to say his name the same way she had earlier. Hearing that, Solha immediately became flustered as she recalled herself calling him by his actual name earlier that evening after teasing him about speaking to another woman. She quietly thought that eventually she would not be able to keep calling him Mr. Cha or Sir forever. Hesitating briefly, she softly whispered his name, Jungwoo, causing a faint smile to appear across his sleeping face. Elsewhere, moving out of the bar, Kim Songchan questioned how much longer he would continue handling such dirty work for others. Thinking carefully, he realized that he still possessed several other options available to him as well, while scrolling through Jungwoo's contact information on his phone. As he walked out, he accidentally stumbled into another man nearby. Irritated, Kim Songchan warned him to watch where he was going, prompting him to quickly apologize before moving aside. Watching the man leave, Kim Songchan quietly noted that the stranger appeared to be the owner of the establishment. He then inwardly guessed that Taegun had likely become tangled in his own conflict involving Jungwoo too. The next morning, right at the usual time of 7, the alarm rang loudly beside Solha's bed. She slowly reached out and turned it off before sitting upright with a quiet sigh. Her thoughts drifted toward the schedule for the day as she recalled that it was Director Choi's wedding. After brushing her teeth and getting ready, she hurried out while thinking that Jungwoo had most likely already arrived. She remarked to herself that she should not be late. While walking down the narrow street, a racing van suddenly sped around the corner far too quickly. Before she could properly react, someone quickly pulled her backward by the arm. The man remarked that drivers really should not speed through streets like those, since someone could easily get hurt. He then questioned if she was all right, to which Solha quietly affirmed. The man stared at her for a brief moment before apologizing, stating that she resembled someone he once knew. Solha lightly affirmed that such things happen sometimes, and politely excused herself, thinking once more that Jungwoo must already be waiting for her. As she walked away, the man continued staring silently in her direction. The scene shifted toward the wedding venue, where Jungwoo arrived alongside Solha. The elegant atmosphere around them immediately made Solha feel somewhat awkward and nervous. She questioned internally whether weddings naturally made people feel uneasy. Just then, a woman approached them and warmly called out to both of them. Solha greeted her politely and questioned how she had been doing lately, while Jungwoo quietly glanced toward his phone after it suddenly vibrated. Seeing that it was a call from his mother, he stepped outside to answer it. His mother questioned whether he was busy, though Jungwoo denied it. She then reminded him that tomorrow was his birthday and stated that she wished to prepare miyakguk for him. Jungwoo calmly affirmed that he would visit together with Solha, which immediately delighted his mother. She remarked that she would prepare everything extra deliciously for them. Jungwoo then questioned whether she needed anything from him, though she denied it and simply told him not to bring anything for her. Meanwhile, back inside the hall, Solha quietly stood near the guests while thinking that Jungwoo had been gone for quite some time. She wondered if the call had been urgent when President Kim suddenly approached her. Solha politely greeted him, though President Kim immediately questioned where Jungwoo had gone and sarcastically remarked that he could not believe a man would leave his girlfriend behind alone at an event. President Kim continued speaking in an unpleasant tone, remarking that Jungwoo acted as though he were some impressive young CEO when, in reality, he had merely been lucky enough to enter the company due to family circumstances. He further stated that Jungwoo was nothing more than the chairman's illegitimate child and questioned what other reason he could possibly have had for joining Venus besides money. Hearing those remarks caused Solha's grip around her purse to tighten slightly. However, instead of reacting emotionally, she calmly interrupted him and remarked that President Kim truly had never changed. She even thanked him for continuing to show so much interest in their CEO. Solha then stated that she had heard about Jungwoo's difficult childhood, including how he had been unable to live with the chairman because of backlash from the family. Even so, she continued, he still managed to enter one of Korea's top university law departments and graduate with honors without receiving proper support from anyone. She further remarked that every business venture he had handled afterward had become successful, questioning whether such accomplishments were not truly remarkable. President Kim took a small step back before awkwardly remarking that anyone could achieve such things if they were desperate enough. Solha calmly affirmed that he himself had likely never experienced desperation before, and gently remarked that enduring such hardships also required talent and skill. Standing a short distance away, Jungwoo overheard the entire exchange and quietly grinned at her response. Later that evening, the scene shifted toward the car ride home. Solha leaned back against the seat and quietly remarked that the entire day had passed by unbelievably fast. Jungwoo observed her tired expression and remarked that she must be exhausted, suggesting that she return home and rest properly. Solha hesitated for a moment before sighing softly. Jungwoo then questioned whether something was bothering her, though Solha quickly denied it and explained that she had simply wanted to give him something. After nervously searching through her purse, she carefully pulled out a small gift and wished him a happy birthday. Jungwoo stared at the gift with visible surprise, while Solha explained that she had always wanted to give him a birthday present before, though she never had the chance since he never accepted personal gifts from employees. Jungwoo quietly questioned whether that had been the reason she had continued fiddling with her purse throughout the evening. As he prepared to open the present immediately, Solha quickly stopped him and shyly requested that he wait until he returned home, because opening it there would embarrass her. Jungwoo teasingly replied that her reaction only made him want to open it even more. However, Solha insisted that it was truly nothing special and reminded him that he already possessed everything he could possibly need. Hearing her words caused Jungwoo to smile warmly as he thanked her, remarking that anything she gave him would already be perfect to him. Solha immediately felt her face grow warm at his response, and internally remarked that such words were genuinely unhealthy for her heart. She quickly told him once more to wait until she had completely left before opening the gift. After stepping out of the car, she reminded him that he still had a long day ahead, and gently told him to rest well before stating that she would see him tomorrow. As Sayla began walking toward her apartment building, Jungwoo questioned whether she was truly certain that she did not want him to walk her the rest of the way. Sayla simply replied that her place was already nearby and continued walking. Just before she disappeared from view, Jungwoo called out to her and remarked that he would contact her later, Sayla turned back with a small smile and affirmed, reminding him to return home safely as well. Once she was finally gone, Jungwoo slowly opened the gift inside the quiet car. Inside rested a carefully knitted muffler, with the initials JM stitched neatly onto it. A faint smile appeared on his face, though the peaceful moment lasted only briefly before his phone suddenly buzzed again. As he looked down at the screen, a news article immediately appeared before his eyes with the headline that Venus CEO cheats on fiancé with secretary. Jungwoo let out a tired groan upon reading it. Elsewhere, inside his home, Taegun calmly stared at the same article displayed across his phone screen. A faint smirk slowly crossed his face as he quietly wondered what Chairman Cha's reaction to such news would be. Inside the colossal office building, Jungwoo stood silently before Chairman Cha, while the old man stared at the news article, reporting that Venus had officially denied the affair rumors. After letting out a low cough, the chairman questioned whether Jungwoo understood how difficult it had been to quiet the press. He then directly asked whether it was true that Jungwoo had been fooling around with his secretary. Jungwoo calmly replied that he had never fooled around with Solha. Instead, he stated that he was involved in a wholehearted and serious relationship with her. Hearing those words caused the chairman to scoff coldly as he remarked that such feelings never lasted. Jungwoo quietly replied that not everyone was like him. The chairman's expression darkened before he instructed Jungwoo to think back to the day he officially became part of the Cha family. He reminded him how desperately he had begged back then, and promised to do whatever was asked of him. The chairman repeated how Jungwoo had agreed to learn the business, become his successor, and marry whoever was chosen for him, without complaint, because it was supposedly his duty as a member of the family. Jungwoo clenched his fist tightly before affirming that he had indeed promised all those things because he had been willing to do absolutely anything to save Hae-yeon. The chairman coldly remarked that it sounded as though Jungwoo was trying to blame him now, even though Hae-yeon's death had not been his fault. He stated that the accident had happened before her treatment could properly continue. However, Jungwoo immediately replied that he knew exactly why the accident had happened and remarked that it could have been avoided if Hyun-young had been sent to the American hospital immediately. Jungwoo's thoughts drifted back toward the painful memories of that winter, when the first snowfall had arrived unusually early. That had been the same season when Hyun-young was diagnosed with leukemia. At the time, Jungwoo had stared blankly in disbelief while questioning how such news could possibly make sense. His mother had quietly explained that Hyun-young had suddenly collapsed one day, which led them to take her for a medical examination, and the test results had only recently returned. Even then, Jungwoo had desperately tried convincing himself that leukemia was treatable and that she could still recover. However, he later realized that the only thing he could do was approach Venus and beg his father for help. As humiliating as it had felt, he still knelt before Chairman Cha and pleaded for Hyun-young to be saved. The chairman had merely stared down at him before questioning what Jungwoo planned to offer in return. Even then, Jungwoo understood that accepting such a deal would eventually return to haunt him, yet he still accepted the opportunity without hesitation. He clenched his fist and affirmed that he would do anything demanded of him if Hyun-young could be saved. Internally, he suppressed the disgust he felt while watching his father tower over him as though he were some untouchable god, deciding another person's fate. The chairman remarked that since Jungwoo had attended Law University, he should already be intelligent enough not to disappoint him. Jungwoo quietly affirmed, convincing himself that his father could continue playing God for as long as he wanted if it meant Hyun-young could survive. At the time, that belief alone had kept him moving forward. Yet afterward, even Hyun-young disappeared from his life. On the day of her funeral, Chairman Cha had refused to appear because he did not want the public learning about his illegitimate children. Remembering that moment caused bitterness to rise within Jungwoo once again as he questioned whether his father understood how abandoned he had felt back then. He coldly stated that the only reason he even possessed the Cha surname was because of his father's blood, so the chairman should stop using their relationship as an excuse to interfere with his life. Jungwoo then firmly declared that he no longer held any obligation to keep his promises, because Hyun-young was already dead. Later, while driving alone through the city, Ji-eunwoo's emotions caused him to lose control of the steering wheel for a brief moment before he quickly steadied the car again. He let out a strained breath while trying to calm himself when his phone suddenly buzzed. Seeing his mother's name appear on the screen caused him to close his eyes briefly before answering. He quietly apologized and stated that he did not think he would be able to visit her that day. He explained that he would come together with Seolha another time instead. The following morning at Venus, Seolha immediately called Ji-eunwoo after hearing he was unwell. She gently questioned whether his condition was truly serious. Ji-eunwoo replied that he would likely recover after some rest. Seolha quickly questioned whether he had visited a doctor and asked whether she should bring him medicine. However, Ji-eunwoo interrupted her and softly apologized, stating that she must have been shocked after seeing the news article. Seolha immediately denied it and remarked that the article had not even been true anyway since the situation had died down rather quickly. Ji-eunwoo quietly replied that the rumors were technically true because they actually were dating in secret. He then admitted that simply hearing her voice already made him feel slightly better. Solha softly told him that he needed to recover quickly for her sake. Jiunwoo responded that he would try coming into the office later that afternoon once he felt a little better, and remarked that he would see her soon. However, Solha denied it and insisted that he should properly rest for the day instead. She jokingly remarked that the employees were probably thrilled to have a day without their strict CEO around. Jiunwoo faintly affirmed that he would think about it. Solha once again instructed him to rest before ending the call. Even afterward, she could not stop worrying because Jiunwoo had never taken a day off before, making her wonder whether he might actually be seriously ill. Meanwhile, Jungmoo sat alone while coughing repeatedly, internally thinking that he still needed to see Solha later despite his worsening condition. Suddenly, his phone buzzed with a new message. Irritated, Jungmoo questioned what kind of nonsense it was this time before opening it. The message cruelly stated that his dead twin sister must surely be crying in the afterlife while watching every decision he made now. Elsewhere inside the office, Solha focused carefully on her work until she sensed someone approaching from behind. For a brief moment, she thought the figure resembled Jungmoo. However, the man suddenly cleared his throat and remarked that she must be Solha Min. Solha immediately stood and politely greeted Chairman Cha. Inside the cabin, the chairman calmly questioned how long she had worked beside Jungmoo. Solha replied that it had been slightly over 3 years. The chairman coldly remarked that such a period was already far too long, and stated that it was no wonder Jungmoo had ended up involved in such a mess. Confused, Solha quietly apologized, though the chairman continued speaking without concern. He remarked that since she was around Jungwoo's age and spent nearly every hour with him, feelings naturally would begin developing between them. He then informed her that Jungmoo would soon become engaged to the youngest daughter of Taekong Group because the families were already arranging a date. He instructed Solha to ensure that no ridiculous rumors like the previous day spread again, and coldly remarked that she should already know her place after enjoying herself long enough. The scene shifted toward Kim Sung-chan, who was responsible for spreading the rumors online. Kim Sung-chan casually remarked that he had not expected Jungmoo to arrive so quickly, to which Jungmoo merely glared coldly at him, before questioning exactly what kind of game he believed he was playing. At the Venus, Solha departed from the office. She glanced at her phone and noticed a message from Jungmoo. He stated that something urgent had come up, so he would not be able to see her today. He also apologized for informing her at the last minute. Solha quietly noted that something like this had been bound to happen sooner or later. She paused for a moment, thinking about how their relationship had begun out of her own selfish desires in the first place. Deep down, she had always known it would never last forever. Even so, after recalling all the memories they had shared together, she realized she had only partially prepared herself for this moment. Still, the pain felt far heavier than she had expected, and tears slowly rolled down her cheeks. The scene then shifted toward Jungmoo. Kim Sung-chan introduced himself first before handing over a card. He stated that he was Kim Sung-chan from the Venus department store security team. He remarked that they were essentially on the same side, causing Jungmoo's expression to stiffen in irritation. Jungmoo coldly replied that he did not care who he was, and asked him to get straight to the point. He questioned why he had contacted him in the first place. Kim Sung-chan casually responded that Jungmoo seemed quite impatient. He then questioned how much Jungmoo truly knew about Selah. Jungmoo frowned and questioned what he was trying to imply. Kim Sung-chan explained that he had once stayed at the same orphanage as Sola, though only for around a year. Hearing this made Jungmoo tense immediately. It was the first time he had ever heard something like this. Sola had never spoken about her family before. Jungmoo questioned what exactly his point was. He remarked that he was done entertaining the conversation and warned him never to contact him again. However, Kim Sung-chan calmly remarked that Jungmoo should also be careful with his words. He stated that unlike privileged people like him, Sola did not have a past she could speak about freely. As Jungmoo prepared to leave, Kim Sung-chan suddenly brought up a man named Min Dong-woo, instantly freezing him in place. Kim Sung-chan stated that Min Dong-woo was currently serving a life sentence for a drunk driving hit-and-run case. He remarked that it had been snowing heavily that night as well, if Jungmoo remembered correctly. Then, without hesitation, he revealed that he was referring to the night Sulha's father had killed his sister. The scene shifted back towards Sulha, who was sitting alone on her bed. Sulha quietly thought about how Jungmoo still had not contacted her since then. She wanted to send him a message first, yet she could not figure out what she was supposed to say. Her eyes slowly drifted toward a button lying on the floor nearby. She gently picked it up, recalling how Jungmoo had accidentally dropped it the night before their trip when he visited her apartment. The memory resurfaced clearly in her mind. Back then, Jungmoo had entered her apartment and remarked that it was his first time seeing her room. Solha had awkwardly replied that she would have cleaned more thoroughly if she had known he would be coming over. Jungmoo casually stated that the room already looked quite clean. Solha responded that it was usually even cleaner than this. Shortly afterward, Jungmoo had wrapped his arms around her from behind and remarked that if she lived with him, she would never need to clean again. Solha had immediately tried to deny it, stating that she could at least handle dinner. However, Jungwoo simply responded that he would gladly take care of that as well. Afterward, they spent time talking together while looking through old photo albums. The atmosphere had been warm and comfortable, and they had laughed together quite a lot. At one point, Jungwoo teasingly remarked that looking through albums was not the real reason he had come over. Solha had softly questioned if that was truly the case before hugging him and admitting that inviting him over had actually been her intention from the beginning. The two of them had continued teasing each other afterward while spending time together happily. Back in the present, Solha quietly reflected on how she had always lived alone in this apartment without issue. Yet today, the entire place strangely felt emptier than usual. The following day at Venus department store, Jeongwoo sat with a troubled expression while recalling the conversation from yesterday. Back then, after Jeongwoo had questioned Kim Song-chan about why he was telling him all of this, Kim Song-chan had calmly explained that he understood better than anyone what people needed in order to live comfortably. Jeongwoo had immediately questioned whether he wanted money. Kim Song-chan straightforwardly affirmed it. He demanded 100 million won as a starting amount and instructed Jeongwoo to deliver it within 3 weeks. He further warned that if he failed to hear from him by then, he would go directly to Selha instead. Recalling those words caused Jeongwoo to let out a frustrated groan. He bitterly noted how well Kim Song-chan understood negotiation tactics. He targeted a person's weakest point and continued digging into it relentlessly until there was no escape left. Jungwoo thought that if money truly was Kim Song-chan's only objective, then fine, he would simply pay whatever amount he demanded. However, another part of the conversation continued weighing heavily on his mind. He recalled Kim Song-chan warning him not to assume it was the only card he had hidden up his sleeve. That remark continued troubling him deeply. Jungwoo quietly wondered what else Kim Song-chan could possibly be hiding. More importantly, the mention of Min Dong-woo would not leave his thoughts alone. The person he hated more than anyone else in the world was Solha's father. Although he understood he should not blindly believe every word Kim Song-chan said, the matter continued lingering heavily in his mind. Finally, Jungwoo called for one of his employees and instructed him to run a complete background check on Min Dong-woo. He ordered him to find out exactly who he was and whether he had truly been responsible for the incident. At the Venus department store, Yoonshim politely attended to a customer before thanking them for their purchase. After the customer left, she stretched lightly and quietly thought that she desperately needed a break. Just then, someone approached from behind and casually remarked that she had never called him. Yoonshim turned around with a welcoming face, prepared to ask what the person wanted, only to freeze in surprise after recognizing Taegun. After purchasing an order, she immediately explained that refunds and exchanges could be processed within 1 week of purchase. Taegun calmly questioned whether she truly did not need any sort of compensation, remarking that he could give her as much as she wanted. However, Yoonshim politely declined and thanked him before bidding him farewell. Taegun simply affirmed it and remarked that he would see her again before finally leaving the store. Shortly afterward, Yoonshim noticed a small gift resting on the counter. Curious, she picked it up and was immediately shocked after recognizing the brand of the lip balm inside. It was extremely expensive, leaving her in pure chaos about why Taegun would give something like this to her. Meanwhile, outside the building, Taegun shoved the remaining gift package to his guard while casually smoking. He quietly remarked that Yoonshim was tougher than he had expected. Even so, he appeared amused rather than frustrated. As smoke drifted through the air, he thought that if he waited patiently long enough, he would probably encounter Solha as well. The scene then shifted toward the office, where Solha informed Jongwoo that Taeyeon Corporation still had not sent a response regarding the matter they had discussed earlier. Jongwoo remarked that the company was taking longer than expected before instructing her to contact President Kim's secretary and ask when they planned to return the proposal. Solha quietly affirmed and prepared to leave. However, as she spoke further, a light cough escaped from her lips. Jongwoo immediately remarked that she must have caught his cold. Solha quickly denied it and insisted that it was only because of the weather. She then stated that she would return to her afternoon tasks and politely asked him to let her know if he needed anything else before stepping out of the office. After she left, Jongwoo sighed quietly before calling her back again. As he stepped closer, he gently held her hand and remarked that he was at least relieved she did not have a fever. Looking at her carefully, he softly instructed her to go home without him tonight. Solha hesitated before questioning whether he had plans for the evening, to which Jongwoo simply affirmed it. Although disappointment briefly crossed her face, she quietly accepted it before leaving. Once outside the office, another cough escaped her lips as she slowly walked down the hallway. She could not ignore how differently Jongwoo had been behaving lately. He appeared anxious for some reason, causing her thoughts to wander toward the possibility of him having a serious conversation with the chairman. Gradually, darker thoughts began filling her mind. She imagined Jongwoo apologizing to her before suggesting they end their relationship. Even while imagining it, she quietly thought that if he truly said those words, she would simply walk away without regrets. Perhaps he would offer her money, or perhaps she would return to focusing entirely on paying off the bank debt. Even so, Solha firmly decided that she needed to speak with him later that night, even if it ended up being over the phone. Suddenly, a familiar voice interrupted her thoughts from behind, questioning whether she was referring to her boyfriend. Solha turned in surprise, only to realize it was Mrs. Cha standing there. Mrs. Cha warmly remarked that Solha did not need to feel awkward around her before casually asking whether she had eaten dinner yet, because she herself had not. The scene shifted toward Jungmu, who sat alone in his office while staring at his phone. He quietly wondered whether any pharmacies were still open at such a late hour. Moments later, a knock echoed through the room, and he instructed the person outside to come in. Soon, Mu Young entered the office. Jungmu remarked that it had been a long time since they last met, to which Mu Young casually responded that meeting him after high school had become nearly impossible. Once seated, Mu Young questioned whether Jungmu was truly certain about investigating this matter again. He then revealed several documents and photographs connected to the accident scene. One set contained information about the man involved, while another detailed the injuries suffered during the accident. As Jungmu looked through the papers, his grip slowly tightened. Realizing there had been a possibility she could have survived, caused a painful expression to appear on his face. Bitterly, he thought that if she had died instantly, she would not have suffered so terribly. Mu Young then carefully explained that based solely on the autopsy report and medical opinions, nobody truly knew what happened immediately after the accident occurred. Furthermore, because there had been no visible security cameras in the area at the time, the investigation itself had been extremely difficult. However, while reviewing the case again recently, they discovered there had actually been a rooftop camera attached to a nearby building. Even so, by the time it was discovered, the case had already been settled through other evidence. Mu Young explained that a video analysis expert had reviewed the footage and concluded that the man in the recording matched Min Dongwoo's physical description. Although there remained a small margin of error due to the vehicle not officially being registered under Dongwoo's name, the evidence still strongly suggested he had caused the accident. Silence gradually filled the room as the ticking clock echoed in the background. Even after hearing all of this information, Jungmu quietly realized one painful truth remained unchanged. He still had lost someone precious because of Solha's father. Yet the emotions inside him no longer felt as simple as hatred alone. What had once been a single feeling had now divided into countless complicated emotions he could barely understand. He recalled his mother's words from earlier, when she confessed that she had recently seen his sister in a dream. She had been crying miserably while quietly repeating that she hated winter more than anything else. Soon afterward, another memory surfaced within his mind, the judge's cold statement during the trial, declaring that because the defendant had ignored the victim despite confirming she was still alive, he deserved the sentence handed to him. Those memories twisted painfully together inside Jungmu's heart. One moment he felt overwhelming rage. Next, sorrow and grief consumed him, followed by traces of pity he desperately wished to reject. Yet above all else, the strongest feeling lingering inside him was the unbearable unfairness of everything. His sister had deserved nothing but love and happiness. At the same time, despite knowing all of this, his feelings for Solha continued growing stronger with every passing day. That realization frightened him more than anything else. Tears slowly slipped down his face as he quietly questioned why something so painful had to happen between them. Loving her now felt like an unforgivable sin, and the unfairness of it all became almost impossible for him to endure. Later that night, Solha sat quietly at the bar while absent-mindedly staring into space after Mrs. Cha excused herself to go to the restroom. While waiting alone, Solha recalled how enthusiastically Mrs. Cha had suggested they visit a bar together instead, proudly mentioning that she knew a really good place nearby. In the end, Solha had unexpectedly agreed, though she still found it slightly awkward being alone with her like this. Meanwhile, inside the bar, several women quietly whispered among themselves after noticing a man entering the bar. They remarked that he was the owner of the place. The man calmly informed one of the employees that the whiskey shipment would arrive the following day. The manager respectfully affirmed it and explained that the delivery had been delayed until evening because of the heavy snowfall outside. As the owner casually glanced around the room, his attention unexpectedly landed on Solha, who was quietly smiling while talking with Mrs. Cha. Shortly afterward, the manager questioned whether he planned to head home soon, but the man denied it and remarked that he intended to check the storage room before leaving. Back at the table, Mrs. Cha warmly remarked that the place was lovely, to which Solha agreed while adding that the cocktails were surprisingly good as well. She admitted that she never realized a bar like this existed so close to her home. Mrs. Cha explained that the place had recently been renovated, though it had actually been around for many years. She fondly recalled how she used to visit the bar frequently with Jungmu's father in the past. Then, with a soft smile, she admitted that it was one of the reasons she sincerely supported Solha and Jungmu's relationship. She further revealed that Jungmu even appeared to be seriously thinking about marriage before asking Solha how she personally felt about it. Hearing those words left Solha completely stunned. Sensing her reaction, Mrs. Cha softly remarked that although Jungmu rarely spoke much after the accident, he truly was a warm and kind person. Curious, Solha quietly questioned what accident she was referring to. Mrs. Cha then explained that Jungmu once had a twin sister who had been born only 2 minutes after him. Unfortunately, a hit-and-run accident had taken her life far too early. The moment Solha heard this, she immediately realized the accident Jungmu had mentioned before was actually a hit-and-run case involving his sister. The scene then shifted toward Taegun, who was casually spending time with another woman while having fun. However, despite the cheerful atmosphere, his thoughts unexpectedly drifted back toward Eunshim. He quietly scoffed to himself, thinking that she truly acted difficult to approach. Meanwhile, the woman beside him playfully questioned when they should meet again. Taegun coldly responded that there would not be another meeting, remarking that he never slept with the same woman twice. Offended, the woman questioned whether he was openly calling himself a jerk, before angrily leaving. Left alone once again, Taegun leaned back while irritation slowly crossed his face. He quietly wondered why Kim Sung-chan still had not contacted him yet. Frustrated, he thought that if this was all the information Kim Sung-chan planned to provide, then the entire situation would become useless. He bitterly remarked that Kim Sung-chan only had one simple task to complete. Meanwhile, after leaving the bar, Mrs. Che warmly reminded Soha to return home safely and message her once she had arrived. Soha politely bid her farewell before stepping outside into the snowy streets. The snowfall had grown heavier than she expected, causing her to quietly wonder whether Jungmu was still busy with his meeting. Taking out her phone, she sent him a message asking him to contact her once his meeting was over, because there was something she truly wanted to discuss with him. Since he still had not replied to her messages, Soha quietly decided that she wanted to settle the uneasy matter between them tonight no matter what happened. Suddenly, a voice from behind casually questioned whether her boyfriend was giving her a hard time. Startled, Soha turned around to see the person from that day. He lightly remarked that he could practically hear her sighing from across the street. Feeling slightly awkward, Soha questioned whether he had come outside for a drink or something similar. The man casually responded that it was something along those lines before admitting that, now that he thought about it, they did not even know each other's names. He introduced himself as Kim Wo-wee, and Soha politely introduced herself in return. Noticing the heavy snow continuing to fall, Wo-wee questioned whether she was heading home alone and offered to drive her there instead, explaining that the roads nearby were dangerous because of frequent sliding accidents during winter. However, Soha politely declined and explained that she still had somewhere else she needed to stop by first. Even so, Wo-wee stopped her and insisted on at least giving her an umbrella, remarking that he would feel more comfortable sending her off safely since she might become a regular customer in the future. Soha accepted the umbrella with gratitude before realizing he actually worked at the bar. She admitted that she initially assumed he had simply been another customer. Thanking him once again, she questioned what his bank account number was, because she intended to repay him for the umbrella later. However, Wo-wee casually chuckled that she could simply keep it. After thanking him sincerely, Soha opened the umbrella and slowly walked away into the snowy night. As Wo-wee quietly watched her disappear into the distance, he let out a heavy sigh while recalling the image of another woman from his memories. Deep inside, he quietly wished that person could somehow return to the world as well. Elsewhere, Jungmu remained alone while silently staring at a small figurine resting nearby. As countless thoughts overwhelmed him again, he quietly reflected on the accident involving his sister. He painfully realized that if Hyunyoung had been taken to the hospital immediately, there still would have been a chance she could have survived. Merely thinking about it filled him with unbearable anger. Until now, he had never once stopped to consider what the driver's family might have gone through afterward. Yet fate had cruelly revealed that Solha belonged to that very family. Because of this, Jungmu honestly no longer knew what he was supposed to say to her. Just then, his attention shifted toward his phone. After noticing several missed calls from Solha, he quietly realized that if he continued avoiding her, she would probably remain awake all night waiting for him. Finally making up his mind, Jungmu immediately called her back. On the other side, an unfamiliar voice suddenly answered the call and questioned how he knew Solha. Instantly alarmed, Jungmu questioned who the person was. The stranger quickly introduced himself as a paramedic and explained that they were currently transporting Solha to the hospital. Hearing those words caused Jungmu's breathing to falter completely, as despair immediately consumed him. Without wasting another second, he rushed out immediately. While running through the snowy streets, Jungmu quietly realized something he had probably known from the very beginning. No matter what kind of past Solha carried, and regardless of who her family was, she remained the only person capable of completely filling his world, while also shaking it apart at the same time. Those thoughts consumed him entirely, as he finally arrived at the hospital and saw Solha there. Jungmu once recalled hearing somewhere that it supposedly took only 3 seconds for someone to fall in love at first sight. Back then, during the intern interviews 3 years ago, countless applicants sat before him while repeating nearly identical answers. Most of them proudly stated that Venus was known as one of the finest companies in the industry and claimed they had always dreamed of working there. Listening to them, Jungmoo quietly thought it was painfully obvious they had either memorized prepared scripts or were trying far too hard to leave a favorable impression. At the time, he even questioned whether he would truly be able to find the right person among them at all. However, after personally experiencing it himself, he eventually realized something different. A person did not even need 3 full seconds. The moment Sulha calmly spoke during her interview, something about her naturally caught his attention. She confidently explained that she believed the company's greatest strength was its deep understanding of what consumers truly wanted. Jungmoo still remembered the confidence in her voice and the sincerity visible in her eyes. Those qualities alone had quietly drawn him toward her without him even realizing it. Then, as time passed, her actions slowly began settling deeper and deeper into his thoughts until she eventually became someone permanently engraved within his heart. Before he noticed it himself, she had already become a person he could no longer imagine living without. Yet now, in the present, all those memories only made the situation feel even crueler. Earlier, he had suddenly been informed that a major traffic accident had occurred because of the dangerously slippery roads. During the chaos, Solha had also been caught up in the accident while attempting to cross the street, and she was currently unconscious. Hearing those words caused Jungmoo to rush toward the hospital without a second thought. While driving through the snowy streets, countless thoughts overwhelmed his mind. He bitterly questioned how he could have allowed something like this to happen again. The accident had happened near his house, making him feel as though everything was somehow his fault once more. The moment he arrived at the hospital, he hurried toward the reception desk and anxiously questioned where the patient named Min Solha had been taken after the accident. The receptionist briefly thought before asking whether the woman had long hair. After Jungmoo quickly affirmed it, she directed him toward one of the beds nearby. As Jungmoo approached, he immediately saw Solha lying unconscious with an oxygen mask covering part of her face. Slowly reaching forward, he carefully held her hand before pressing it against his face. The warmth of her skin instantly overwhelmed him. Her hand still felt warm, unlike Hyun-young's hand all those years ago. The memory alone caused tears to slowly gather in his eyes. At that moment, all he could do was feel grateful that he could still feel her warmth beside him. The following morning, the doctor informed Jungmoo that she was relieved he had stayed nearby because Solha apparently had nobody else who could come for her. Immediately, Jungmoo questioned her condition. The doctor calmly explained that Solha had only suffered a light concussion. Fortunately, the car had not directly hit her. Instead, she had fallen backward while trying to avoid the collision. Since she received treatment quickly enough, there was no serious danger to her condition. Even so, Jungmoo quietly questioned why she still had not awakened yet. The doctor explained that Soha was simply sleeping and added that she had likely been under severe stress lately or had accumulated too much fatigue over time. Combined with the physical shock from the accident, her body had simply shut itself down temporarily because it desperately needed proper rest. After hearing those words, Jungmoo silently sat while recalling the doctor's explanation. It almost sounded as though her body itself had finally reached its limit and was pleading for a break. Just then, hurried footsteps echoed through the hallway before Unsim suddenly rushed in, calling out for Jungmoo. Clearly worried, she immediately questioned how Soha was doing and whether she was all right. After Jungmoo explained the doctor's words to her, Unsim sighed in relief after learning Soha had not actually been hit by the car. She remarked that it was unbelievable something like this had happened while Soha was simply walking outside. She also thanked Jungmoo for immediately coming to the hospital for her. However, Jungmoo quietly blamed himself and remarked that Soha should have answered his calls earlier. His voice trembled slightly as he questioned what he would have done if she never woke up again. Hearing him speak like that caused Unseo to quickly reassure him. She firmly stated that Soha was the strongest person she knew. Back in high school, Soha had once carried her all the way to the hospital herself, while Unseo had been seriously sick. Because of that, Unseo confidently believed Soha would recover and return to normal very soon. Suddenly, a nurse came in and questioned whether Soha's guardian was present because the patient had finally regained consciousness. The moment Jungmoo heard those words, he immediately hurried toward her room. As he approached her bedside, he anxiously questioned how she was feeling before finally letting out a quiet sigh of relief. Meanwhile, after seeing the exhausted expression on his face, Solha quietly realized she had never seen him look so tired and worried before. She even wondered whether he had stayed awake beside her the entire night. Despite everything, Solha softly reassured him that she only needed a little rest and asked him not to worry too much. However, Jungmoo tightly held her hand before quietly thanking God that she had awakened. He gently instructed her to lie down again because she still needed rest. Seeing the atmosphere between them, Unsim quietly stepped out, deciding that she needed to give them some privacy for now. She thought she could always leave Solha a message and return later because the two of them clearly needed time alone together. Later, while Solha slowly ate some soup inside the hospital room, Jungmoo softly questioned whether she wanted him to feed her instead. Embarrassed, Solha quickly denied it and insisted she could manage on her own. Even so, Jongmu teasingly remarked that he genuinely wanted to feed her himself. Solha lightly laughed before changing the topic and remarking that the hospital room looked far too luxurious. Jongmu explained that the doctor strongly emphasized how important proper rest was for her recovery. Looking around the spacious room again, Solha quietly admitted it truly was surprisingly large and comfortable. A moment later, Jongmu gently clasped her hand before apologizing for everything. However, Solha immediately denied that he had done anything wrong. Instead, she softly admitted she felt genuinely happy seeing him as the first person beside her when she opened her eyes. Then, with a faint smile, she remarked that she had never seen him cry before, instantly leaving Jongmu embarrassed and speechless. Meanwhile, elsewhere at the bar, Yoonshim quietly entered while recalling Solha mentioning this place before. Looking around, she immediately thought the interior looked far fancier than she expected. She quietly decided she would only stay long enough for 2 cocktails before leaving again. However, while walking, she accidentally bumped into someone and immediately apologized. The moment she lifted her head, she froze after realizing it was Taegun standing in front of her. Startled, Yoonshim questioned what exactly he was doing there before awkwardly apologizing once again. Yet instead of answering normally, Taegun suddenly grabbed her wrist and sharply pulled her closer. The sudden movement startled Yoonshim completely, causing her to internally curse him while thinking she already knew the man was crazy. However, she never expected him to be reckless enough to behave like this publicly. Before she could even properly react, Taegun tightly pulled her forward and suddenly kissed her, leaving Yoonshim completely stunned. As Yoonshim found herself trapped in Taegun's embrace, she questioned what in the world he was doing and why he was so unexpectedly strong. Irritated, she bit his lips as to push him out. She cursed at him and remarked that being drunk was no excuse to harass someone. Taegun merely stared at her in silence while Yoonshim stated that he should stay where he was because she was about to call the cops. Before she could move any further, an assistant quickly rushed over and pleaded for her to wait. Bowing repeatedly, he apologized on behalf of his boss and explained that Taegun had consumed far too much alcohol. Yoonshim groaned and questioned whether she was simply expected to forgive everything because he happened to be drunk. The assistant continued apologizing without raising his head. Watching the exhausted man bow over and over again reminded Yoonshim of herself whenever she had been forced to deal with difficult customers. She realized the poor man had done nothing wrong and probably could not even go home because of this situation. Letting out a tired sigh, Yoonshim told him to forget the apology and simply keep a close eye on Taegun next time, since there was no telling what he might do in such a state. Afterwards, she quietly stepped outside. The following day, Solha walked onto the terrace to get some fresh air. Suddenly, a warm coffee lightly touched her cheek. Jingmu questioned whether she was feeling cold, though Solha denied it before taking a small sip of coffee. After a brief silence, Jingmu mentioned hearing about her meeting with the chairman the previous week, causing Solha to grow slightly anxious. Noticing her reaction, Jingmu calmly stated that he already understood what she was worried about, but he would never allow such things to happen. He advised her not to let other people's words affect her and instead focus only on him. Hearing those words caused Solha's eyes to turn teary as she suddenly began crying, drawing the attention of nearby patients and onlookers who whispered among themselves about how terrible her husband must have been for making his wife cry. Jungmu immediately embraced her and apologized, remarking that she could blame him for everything instead. However, Solha shook her head and admitted she simply felt grateful, though once she had started crying, she could no longer stop herself. Jungmu gently wiped her tears and remarked that her eyes would become swollen again. He added that even if she tried pushing him away, he still would not let her go, asking her to promise she would never leave him. Solha softly asked to promise her, and Jungmu quietly affirmed that he needed to keep such a promise. As he lifted her chin slightly, the surrounding people remarked that the couple must have made up after their argument. Meanwhile, Solha could only think about how many people were surrounding them at the moment. Just then, Jungmu's phone suddenly buzzed. Glancing at the screen caused his expression to darken slightly. He told Solha to head back inside first because he needed to answer the call, and Solha obediently agreed before walking away. Although she attempted to ignore it, she still wondered whether the call was something urgent. Not long after Jungmu stepped away, several elderly women gathered around Solha and complimented her for having such a dependable husband. They remarked that the two of them looked exactly like newlyweds. One of them recalled how Jungmu had previously introduced himself as her fiancé, though now he was openly referring to himself as her husband. Hearing their words left Solha completely embarrassed as she wondered what in the world they were talking about. Meanwhile, Jungmu answered a call from Kim Sung-chan, who casually greeted him and remarked that it had been a while. Kim Sung-chan joked that he was thankful it was not snowing before questioning how Jungmu had been feeling lately. Jungmu coldly responded that he doubted Kim Sung-chan had called merely to ask about his condition, and told him to get to the point immediately. Kim Sung-chan then questioned whether Jungmu had thought about his earlier offer since the promised deadline was quickly approaching. Jungwoo questioned what promise Kim Sung-chan was referring to because he did not remember making any promises at all. In response, Kim Sung-chan mockingly asked whether he should instead refer to it as a violent threat. He reminded Jungwoo once again that if he refused to comply, he would go directly to Solha. Jungwoo remarked that Kim Sung-chan seemed convinced he held the upper hand, though he was gravely mistaken because he did not believe a single word coming from him. However, Kim Sung-chan merely laughed and advised him to sit back and watch everything unfold. He admitted he could hardly wait to see what would happen next. Immediately afterward, Jungwoo ended the call. Back inside the room, Sola recalled the elderly women mentioning how Jungwoo had previously claimed they were engaged. Lying on the bed, she found herself unconsciously imagining what it would truly feel like to become engaged to him. Yet, along with those thoughts came worries about whether his family would ever accept her. She even began wondering where a proposal would happen and who might eventually give speeches at their wedding. Her thoughts continued wandering until Jungwoo suddenly waved a hand in front of her face and questioned what she was thinking about so deeply. Caught off guard, Seolha immediately blushed and almost admitted she had been thinking about their wedding before quickly correcting herself and awkwardly claiming she had merely been thinking about their Wednesday plans instead. Jungwoo questioned her suspiciously while Seolha nervously remarked there was simply too much to prepare. Jungwoo gently called out for her and asked her to stop thinking about unnecessary things and focus only on him. Hearing those words caused Seolha's heartbeat to quicken uncontrollably. Slowly, she reached out and placed a hand against his face before suddenly leaning forward and kissing him, completely catching Jungwoo by surprise. The moment their lips separated, Seolha immediately pushed him away and nervously admitted she did not know what had suddenly come over her. Jungwoo let out a quiet sigh and questioned whether she truly intended to push him aside immediately after kissing him first. Seolha hurriedly attempted to deny it, though Jungwoo simply grasped her face gently before kissing her once again. Seolha let out a soft breath while Jungwoo admitted he had been trying his best not to touch her too much because she was still recovering. However, Seolha lightly tapped against him and shyly remarked that he could touch her whenever he wanted. Hearing those words deeply moved Jungwoo. As he looked down at her small face, he found himself completely captivated by her presence and unable to look away from her any longer. As the two of them continued spending time together, the atmosphere between them became increasingly playful. However, the moment was suddenly interrupted when several nurses rushed into the room after hearing the emergency alarm. One of them quickly called out for Miss Sela and explained that they had arrived because the emergency button had been pressed. Sela immediately apologized and awkwardly explained that it had only been a mistake. Meanwhile, Jungwoo sat beside the bed, completely out of breath and silently cursing under his breath because he could barely even speak properly at the moment. The nurses exchanged relieved looks before one of them remarked that she was glad it had not been an actual emergency. After bidding them farewell, the nurses finally left the room. Sola immediately let out a deep sigh of relief, feeling as though she had barely escaped a dangerous situation. Later, after finally being discharged, Sola returned home with Jungwoo accompanying her. Standing outside the house, Sola thanked him sincerely for dropping her off and remarked that she would call him once she got inside safely. Just as Jungwoo was about to leave, he suddenly pulled out a bouquet of flowers and handed them to her, congratulating her on being discharged from the hospital. Solha looked genuinely surprised and questioned when he had even prepared something like this. Smiling brightly, she thanked him and remarked that the flowers were beautiful and smelled wonderful. Seeing her reaction delighted Jungwoo because she clearly liked them far more than he had expected. While holding the bouquet carefully, Sela hesitated for a moment before awkwardly mentioning that a few of his clothes were still at her house. Jungwoo questioned her curiously, causing Sela to explain that he could simply take them back while he was already there. She also shyly offered him a cup of tea if he was feeling all right. However, Jungwoo calmly declined and remarked that she could return the vases another time since both of them still had work the next day. After saying so, he quietly stepped inside the car. Watching him leave, Sela thought he must have been extremely tired after everything that had happened recently. Meanwhile, inside the car, Jungwoo let out a frustrated sigh and admitted to himself that he would not be able to control himself if he entered her house right now. Deep down, he knew he was not confident enough to simply retrieve his clothes and leave peacefully. For the moment, he felt it was better to hold himself back. After some days at the office, Sela finally returned to work after her leave. Sitting at her desk, she thought about how much unfinished work had piled up during her absence. Before long, several employees approached her one after another with questions regarding different reports and documents. One employee called out to Sela and questioned whether she still had the report template from the previous year. Sela immediately affirmed and politely stated that she would send it shortly. Not far away, Jungwoo quietly observed her from a distance. Seeing her calmly return to her normal routine caused a faint smile to appear on his face as he entered his office. As Sela continued organizing her work, her phone suddenly buzzed with a message. Yoonshim had texted her, suggesting they should celebrate her recovery and offering to buy her dinner later. Shoa smiled softly while typing a response. However, before she could finish, someone knocked lightly against her desk. Another employee called out for her attention. Shola quickly Yunshim from her seat and questioned how she could help. The employee then reminded her about the report she had requested earlier. Meanwhile, inside his office, Jingmu found himself thinking that since both of them would likely leave work early today, perhaps he should invite Sela out for dinner. The thought alone improved his mood slightly, but as he glanced outside through the glass walls, his expression slowly changed. He noticed Shola smiling brightly while speaking with someone unfamiliar. Jungmu narrowed his eyes slightly and questioned who the man was because he had never seen him before. Watching the stranger stand so comfortably near her immediately irritated him. The look on the man's face especially caused Jungmu to groan quietly in displeasure.